Paris-Roubaix, the queen of the classics, has elected an outstanding favourite in Fabian Cancellara. But over the toughest unmade roads of northern France, others will try to steal the day. It's Paris-Roubaix, next on the NBC Sports Network. This is the Epic Cycle Series presented by Michelob Ultra, and welcome to the 111th edition of Paris-Roubaix, presented live by Competitive Cyclist. Hello everybody, I'm Phil Liggett, alongside me is Paul Sherwin, and welcome to clear blue skies over France, even if it is a little bit unseasonably cold. Paul, the route, as always, takes in 27 sectors of cobbled roads of northern France. Slight changes this year, but the hard sectors are still there.
Actually, Paris-Roubaix starts about 40 miles to the north of Paris in the town of Compiègne. But this race, over 158 miles, is really all about the 27 sections of cobblestones. 1-star rating for the easy ones, 5-star ratings for the most difficult. And the first hard one is the Roubaix de Arenberg, 1.5 miles long. Then Mont-Saint-Pével. If you've got anything left in the legs, you have to save it for the Carrefour de l'Arbre, about 15 miles from the finish line in Roubaix.
3 seconds across the board. Now we pick up on Andre Greipel as we move forward here, the man of the cobblestones. And we're hearing there's been a crash, and it must be at the back of the race. We'll see if our cameras can pick that one up. If not, we'll stay at the front here.
You can see the speed now that these guys are starting to hit these cobblestones. They know they're coming to a very important part. There was a French flag just slipped onto the road. I hope nobody's back wheel picks that one up. But the speed now on these section of cobbles will do a serious amount of damage at the back. But just mark my words, we're now about 6 or 7 kilometers away from what I always regard as the big first turning point of Paris-Roubaix, the Forest of Arenberg, and that's the crash at the back.
Well, there is the crash, and they seem to have picked up Richie's hat there, the cone. It's a rider from the Blanco team who's gone down.
Danger around any corner in Paris-Roubaix. You've got to be alert. You've got to ride in the first positions of the main field, because at least you've got a good chance of a clear sighting once you come into these cobblestone sections.
And this is Sector 19. The next one is the first 5-star. Sector 18 takes us at 158 kilometers into the race. Just under 100 to go when we get there. This is the lone rider, Andre Greipel, being swept up, so his race has been all to no avail. He could not cross the gap. He allowed it to go, but what he's done is try and make the riders chase them down, and that's taken the pressure off. As we look there, there's Andre Greipel back in together. Well, we've seen dangers in the race all along, and what happened back on the Sector 19, just before we got to Sector 19, was an incredible crash. Johan Alfredo, he looked over his shoulder, you know, Paul, and then he clipped that central sign, and his chin clipped it, and he had a very nasty fall, and he's out of the race.
Very nasty fall by Alfredo, but you know, you've got to be alert in a race like this. You've got to ride near the front. It's probably more important in Paris-Roubaix to ride at the front end of the pack than it is in any other race during the year, because you need to have a clear sight of what's happening in front of you, not what's going on behind.
So caught on Sector 19, Andre Greipel coming towards the end of Sector 19 now. The 4 leaders, and the gap is down to 1:43. They had 2 minutes when they entered this section of cobblestone, so that's a big regain. Looks as though we're all going out to battle, doesn't it, down there, as the tanks go down the cobblestones. All together. 1:41 the spread, and we're just 100 kilometers now from the finish. So the big favourite, Fabian Cancellara, still sits in the peloton, and so too do his arch rivals. They all still dream of the cobblestones that lie ahead. There's a nice view as we look down, and the long straight road, all calm and ready, but not when we go over the railroad crossing and onto the forest. For a few kilometers, it is absolutely crazy. It's only 2.4 kilometers the length before we come off the forest road. but if the riders do fall, they will block the road, and that's why the boys who fancy their chances today must be near the front.
Well, Matty Hayman there in the black jersey of Team Sky, tapping out a very savage rhythm. These riders know now that they will survive to the Forest of Arenberg, but what will be the race situation when they come out of it? Because it is chaos. It's always chaos. Riders, when the Forest of Arenberg was first introduced into Paris-Roubaix, they thought that the race organisers were going to get slammed for including such a crazy section of cobblestones. But every rider who crossed the Forest of Arenberg was actually proud to have survived it.
Nice to see Clément Goretzky of the Bretagne team now doing his share of the work here. They're all trying to eat at the same time to keep their energy up. This race will run for 6 hours today. It's a long way, especially in these conditions where the air is cold and energy expenditure will be high.
I just noticed the race referee getting himself out of the gap as well, because he knows from experience that even though the gap is 1.5 minutes from the four-man leading group to the main field, that gap can get closed down in this section of cobblestones. So they want to keep the race as clear as possible between the four leaders and the main field behind.
The dynamic sporting town of Wallers, that sign just told us. And now there is the entrance to the forest where the trees begin. Just look at all the campers on the left. It's rather like a Tour de France these days on Paris-Roubaix. They're moving in with 2 or 3 days to go. This was where the 140-kilometre ride began yesterday for the cyclo-tourists who could taste the whole route all the way to Roubaix. And there's a lot of sore hands and other parts by the end of yesterday, I'm sure of that. Here we go, wait for it. The railroad crossing is up, and I'm sure they're in touch with the State National Croix de Fer, National Railways, to make sure no trains spoil the fun.
Now's the moment. These riders know that they've survived. This a huge crowd always welcomes Paris-Roubaix into this Forest of Arenberg. They're over the section of the railway station there, and here is the forest.
So they've gone in with 1 minute and 26 seconds is the gap as the four leaders enter the Forest of Arenberg. The cross of St George, the flag of England flying, the flag of Wales. Both of those riders are amongst the favourites today, with Geraint Thomas of Wales. And of course, Ian Stannard's had a rough ride. The Belgian champion not here, last year's winner Tom Bonham, but others may emulate him. There is the gap, there is the crowd, all kept to one side of the road.
Bear in mind, Phil, this road is only open for 2 days of the year. That's for the reconnaissance of Paris-Roubaix and for Paris-Roubaix itself. And these riders realise this is a road that dates back to the Napoleonic times. It's straight, 2.5 kilometres in length, and it is very, very rough indeed. And if you look towards the side of the road on the left there, you ain't riding a bike down there because it's very muddy this afternoon.
Well, it is mud, but it's completely frozen with temperatures overnight at 28 degrees Fahrenheit, -2 degrees. That will be a very hurtful fall if you come down on the left of the road today.
Now watch this speed now. The police motorbike outriders now are leading the main field into the Forest of Arenberg. 18 sections of cobblestones to go, and look at the speed they're hitting it.
The flag of Scotland I can see also flying there. The British Isles well represented, that blue flag down there. And there's the leaders onto it now in a long thin line. Keep your eyes all the way along the peloton to see riders make mistakes and tumble by the wayside. That happens all the time. They've gone on now. They've already lost 12 seconds of the lead since entering the roads here of the Forest of Arenberg. Sat at the back in the hot seat. Looks like it's Jens de Boucher of Belgium who's got the hot seat at the tail.
You can just about see the unevenness of these cobblestones, and you can see it's a very big long line. It's been a rapid race since the start. 47 kilometres an hour, almost 28 miles an hour average speed. And BMC are putting the hammer down at the front end of this race, and they're starting to split a couple of riders. But look at the time gap. They went into this section of cobblestones with 1.5 minutes advantage. They've now got less than 1 minute.
Slicing into it, and the flag of Australia and Denmark just in our screens on the left with the line of Flanders. That's the yellow flag there, as everybody supports everybody here now. They all know the pain they're going through. Stuart O'Grady, the oldest man in the race, is just coming up to 40 years of age. Not quite the oldest man, but he would be the oldest winner if he were to get to the finish today in first place. Stegmans is at the back, flying the flag for Belgium.
Well, you can see the way the bikes are bouncing at the back end of the wheel there as we look at Stegman's, and look how this race has all of a sudden come back together because of this very, very famous section of cobblestones, the Forest of Arenberg. Matty Heyman is the man on the front in that black jersey, followed by Stuart O'Grady. He's been here so many times before. Those yellow motorbikes there are the neutral motorbikes, and they will look after any of these riders who might have a mechanical incident.
And that the flag of New Zealand flying there. How international has this race become now? They've got Jess Sargent riding very well, but this is the big move here now, because we get back to the action. Is Taylor Phinney, who has pushed on here. He's full of enthusiasm. He loves this event. He's won it twice as a young rider, but never as a pro, and he's trying now to reach the split in the field.
Well, I was talking to his dad yesterday, Davis Phinney, who said he was a little bit concerned because he thought that Taylor was a little bit too tired, and he actually asked the team management if they could pull him out of the Tour of Flanders to have him up and ready for this event this afternoon.
Well, a very good decision here. And they've gone into the mud on the right of the road here now, so riders have already started finding the rocky side of the course, and out they're going to have to get the chain. One guy wrestling with his chain there. Well,
that was Geraint Thomas in the black jersey of Team Sky who went off, and that's Huterovic, the rider from AG2R. They're starting to claw their way back to Taylor Phinney in the black and red jersey on the front here, Phil, but he obviously has no fear at all of Paris-Roubaix, because, you know, he's won the under-23 event of this bike race on 2 occasions.
So it's Stuart O'Grady, the grand old man from Adelaide, South Australia, who leads them off the course of the Forest of Arenberg. There's the sharp left now as we head down towards Wallace again, and then we change direction onto the Pont Gibus, reintroducing that section back into Paris-Roubaix. But what damage has been done here? There's a definite 3 split in the peloton just at the moment, and it's Taylor Phinney who is pile driving the move at the front here to try and just reduce the size of the peloton. I think that's what's more on his mind right now than to escape.
Well, just looking down that line, I'm looking to see if I can see the Radio Shack rider, Fabian Cancellara, because I would have expected him to be towards the front end of the main field here.
Well, we saw him at the back at a very odd time of the race, and there's a bit of ground to be made up here by the Radio Shack riders, who are well spread down this field. I haven't seen Fabian go through yet.
Well, this is always the chaotic part of this race. It's down to around about 40 seconds to a group of 20 riders who've prized an advantage on the Forest of Arenberg, and most of that pressure was done by the young American rider Taylor Phinney, just sitting on the front, on the left-hand side of the main field there.
So around about 40 seconds is the gap now between the 4 leaders and a group of some 20 riders here as they come to the end of the infamous Sector 18, our first 5-star sector of the day. Next challenge comes in just about 3 miles or 5 kilometers before we get onto the cobblestones again.
Well, these 4 have survived, but they've lost a huge chunk of their advantage. This is a long straight road now as we head down towards a smaller mining town of Denain, and that's where they will turn to the right and head on to the next section of cobblestones.
So 4 riders clear. We're out of the Forest of Arenberg, 91 kilometers to go. That is around about still 56 miles to race. Today's live coverage of Paris-Roubaix is presented by Competitive Cyclist, America's Pro Bike Authority. Just looking here at the split here. Take a look at the brakes, Paul, on the Cofidis riders' handlebars here. That's for when you ride the cobbles with your hands in the middle, I guess.
Well, a lot of riders to put these on, they've come across from mountain biking, and one of the reasons is because if you're riding on the cobblestones, you want to keep your hands in the middle of the handlebars and have the ability to brake and not have to move your hands to the outside of your handlebars. Here's the right-hand turn now, and we're heading up and lining up for the next section of cobblestones, which is nicknamed the Pont Gibus, after Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle, who won this race on 2 occasions.
Well, there they are. We're coming inside half a minute now for these leaders. We get onto Sector 17. This will take us under the Pont Gibus. It was an old railway bridge. I'm not sure whether... I think they're taking it down now, the railroad as well.
Yeah, they have, but if you look at these cobbles, this is a section of cobbles that hasn't been used in Paris-Roubaix for a couple of years because they've in fact renovated them, and it looks like a boulevard.
Yes,
a rough boulevard.
Until you look at the chain bouncing around, I quite agree. There's a little split as they try to get off the front here, but the peloton has got them in the sights here, and we might be able to see that. 55 miles to go, 88 kilometres. try to send an advance party up the road a bit to strengthen the Australian tandem up there of Heyman and O'Grady.
Well, the gap is down to just 21 seconds. That is around about a 400-metre gap over the cobblestones like this. But as you can see, they really are bouncing. There is the Pont Gibus, and it's been well decorated to celebrate Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle.
Yes, we'll be watching this race. He was and still is the oldest winner of Paris-Roubaix, and the year he won was Stuart O'Grady's first ride in this event. He was on the same team at the time. And if he were to win today, he would become the next oldest winner and take over from his old teammate Gilbert. It's a tall ask because they're not letting anything go here at all. This is a big peloton to be crashing over the cobblestones with only 87 kilometres left to ride. The weather is very kind today, bitterly cold, although I don't suppose these riders are feeling too cold at the moment as they continue on their way. Breakaway trying to establish the lead.
Well, it's all now getting into the section of the race. We're just over 53 miles to go to the finish. 16 seconds is the advantage. It's now starting to get to the wearing down process. These section of cobblestones are fairly long. The next section after we move away from here is in about 6 kilometers time, and that section of cobblestones is almost 2.5 miles long, and that's the section from Ornain to Wanigny.
Now coming towards the end of sector 17 here as we head on towards this next sector, which is a long one at 3.7 kilometres. Looking down at the breakaway there, they're starting to feel the pressure a little bit, I think. Stegman's doing a lot of work, brings them off nicely. The big Belgian rider who won into Ghent, where he beat Tom Bonen a few years ago in the Tour de France. And there's the peloton, 8 seconds, if that now. And there, just catch a glimpse of the helicopter that gives us these wonderful images from the sky. That, by the way, is a little trick the riders often employ. They look for the location of the helicopter and it tells them where the location of the breakaways are.
You might just have noticed the yellow service car being moved out, and that's because the race referees now think that breakaway group of 4 riders is about to get caught. That group behind the main field has swelled in numbers since we moved away from the Forest of Arenberg. Anybody in with a chance had to really dig deep into their suitcase of courage to get themselves back into the main field, because that may well be the last chance as we start to toughen the race up.
Everybody just checking where everybody is now, and this is the catch here. And it's going to come at around about 85 kilometres left to race here, some 53 miles or so to go. But Stuart O'Grady here licking his lips. He's really up for the fight today. He says, I always give myself an ambition, and my ambition today is to become the oldest winner of Paris-Roubaix. And he'll make a lot of friends by saying that, because he has tremendous support, not just in Australia or indeed Adelaide, where he comes from, but also around the world.
There's a small 7-man group now trying to get themselves across to the 4-man leading group, but the gaps are really not very much at all. 10 seconds to the 7-man chasing group and another 10 seconds back to the main field.
There you can see 4 leaders, about 5 or 6 trying to get across. Another group of some 7 trying to reach the main part of the peloton. Still working very well, keeping everybody in sight. Well, they might just try to keep the pressure on here. They won't be aware that the race is in a split situation behind, and if the advance group gets them, it might start to move away again.
Well, Matty Heyman in the black jersey for Team Sky, keeping the pressure on. As soon as he feels this leading group of 4 riders slow down, he goes back to the front to keep the energy in his pedaling action. The reason for that is he wants to take as much pressure off the shoulders of the 2 riders who in his team are probably regarded as the leaders before the start of today. And that, of course, is Geraint Thomas, who had a pretty rough time going through the Forest of Arenberg, but managed to stay in the main field. And, of course, Ian Stannard, who's had so much bad luck already. And here's Geraint Thomas.
Yes, Geraint Thomas driving through in the black on the left as we say goodbye to Waller. And Thomas also a man on many people's lips today. It would be very nice because a British rider has never won Paris-Roubaix. The best placed was Roger Hammond and Barry Hoban, who both have had 3rd place finishes. Hammond back in 2004. And no higher than that. And Geraint Thomas He's really now, he's turned his back on the track where he had a tremendous career, is now riding here on the road and looking very strong indeed. Meanwhile, it's his teammate, Matthew Heyman, who's driving the charge at the front, and the gap 23 seconds. As we look across the rather bleak landscape here in northern France, the peloton is angry. A long, thin line as we watch here the 111th Paris-Roubaix. The 4 leaders are still clear, but they're about to be reinforced, and it looks as though it might be by just about everyone.
Well, it's Radio Shack on the front in the black, red and white jerseys, making all of the tempo in the main field, trying to make sure that a large group of riders doesn't establish itself off the front of the race this afternoon, because 2 or 3 riders they're not too concerned about. They know they've got the power to pull those guys back later on in the race. But when you start to get a group of 15 or 20 riders slipping off the front end of a peloton, it's a lot more difficult task to pull them back in.
These are the 4 leaders. O'Grady off to the right of our picture, looking for food in his back pocket, and it looks as though they were all swept up in the chase behind, and the peloton is now moving smoothly forward here. This is going to be a big bunch of around about 100 riders coming together, with 82 kilometers to go, 51 miles left to race to Roubaix. Everybody just looking across at each other here. The peloton's got a good tempo going at the moment. So sharp left coming up. You'll see the spread of the race.
Yes, but that sharp left indicates that we're not too far away from the next section of cobblestones, almost 2.5 miles long. You see that big water tower in the background? They call those chateau d'eau in France, the castle of water. Well, if you know that castle of water, you know that you're not too far away from the next section of cobblestones. Riders will look for these little things on the landscape to remind them just exactly where they are in the race.
Well, if we sprung a leak right now, I think it will be frozen solid. It's been so cold over in Europe these last few weeks. Spring is a little bit delayed, shall we say. But spring is certainly in the tail of Stuart O'Grady today. He licks his lips and gets on with it. A bit unlucky that break got swept up. If they'd just joined on, they may have gone clear, but I can't see it lasting much longer now. Looking down from the helicopter, there's not even 100 riders down in that pack.
But it's still under the control of Radio Shack on the front here. That's the team of Fabian Cancellara. And Cancellara is the 3rd place rider behind his teammates there, just keeping up to the front end of the main field. There's also still a number of riders from BMC right in there, and Edvald Bosenhagen, if you can see the Norwegian flag right in the arrowhead of the peloton.
Yes, the most impressive riders keeping control, apart from Team Radio Shack, as they bounce onto Sector 16 now. 3.7 kilometers this, over 2 miles they're on this stretch for. Really the best riders who've been watching everything, Geraint Thomas of Team Sky, and also Edvald Bosenhagen on the same team, the Norwegian champion. Taylor Phinney has got himself right at the front as they've come onto Sector 16, or about to, and also, as you say, Paul Torhushoff. These are the boys we expected to shine, and so far, so good.
Well, you know what? This 4-man leading group are not raising the white flag yet. They are keeping the pressure on, hoping there's going to be a splintering at the front end of the main field, and a small group, a select group of 15 to 20 riders starts to move forward. But this section, although it's rated as a star section of four stars, it is really made difficult by the length, almost 2.5 miles long.
A couple more Chateau d'Eau on the right there, Paul. Just looking down on the peloton here as they continue to crash over the cobblestones. In the hot seat at the back is Alessandro Patacchi just now, the sprinter, and he's doing well to hang on to the peloton over these cobblestones as Radio Shack steer at the front. 3 of them there, setting the pace, trying to keep this race in touch with that breakaway, and they're doing a great job.
Well, in about 7th or 8th position in that pale blue jersey of Garmin Sharper, former winner Johan van Summeren. He says there's only one race in the year where he likes to assume the mantle of the team leader, and it's this one today. And he did it very successfully a couple of years ago when he rode alone onto the velodrome here, outfoxing and outwitting Fabian Cancellara, who was marked out of the race, and on that occasion he was also the pre-race favourite.
Well, the riders have got to break this race up if they're going to outwit Fabian Cancellara. In the Tour of Flanders last week, the great Belgian classic Cancellara, they took him to too close to the finish, where his pure strength ripped him away from the field to win alone. And the feeling is, if this peloton comes as a group towards the last 15 miles, 25 kilometers of the race today, Cancellara will be unstoppable. So they're going to have to attack.
Only one thing might go against him, Phil, and the fact is that he's had two very nasty crashes during the course of this week. Once in the Grand Prix de l'Escaut, which happened in the early part of Tuesday.
Yep.
And you can see the 4-star rating there. Still 2 kilometers to go to the end of this cobblestone. But Fabian Cancellara was actually showing off a little bit to some journalists when he went to have a look at the cobblestones, and he lost his front wheel and went down very hard on his hip. And he says that could be the thing that goes against him here this afternoon.
Well, he is prone to falling. I don't know whether that makes him a bad bike handler or what, but he does fall an awful lot, Fabian Cancellara. You will recall he crashed out with a broken collarbone in the Tour de Flanders last year. This is Michael Schaar going clear now, and this is another card being played by Team BMC. I'm quite sure Hushoft and Finney has said go and stretch them, make them chase you, and Michael Schaar is a very, very good bike rider.
Well, one thing that they want to do, all of the teams realise the best way to try, look at the move that he makes there, just on the top. He comes outside his own teammate there, puts the pressure on, sees the gap opening. What they want to try and do, look at the way the front wheel is bouncing over those cobblestones. The only way to beat Cancellara, Phil, is to try and isolate him in the last 40 or 50 kilometres. And that's why these teams are now starting to throw these attacks at Team Radio Shack.
Well, he's got quite a lead there. As you look down, about 200 metres over the peloton, which is down to around about 80 riders, I would think. In the far distance, you can still see the 4 leaders. They've got them on the string, but they can't quite wheel them in at the moment. Gert Stegmans is the rider setting the pace. You can always recognise this man. He's got such broad shoulders and a big chest there. Gets plenty of oxygen inside those lungs.
Yep, he's moving to the middle of the cobblestone now. That's the best place to actually handle these cobblestones. They're a little bit smoother over the crown, and the most dangerous part is over to the left-hand side. That's where you're more likely to pick up little flints that get washed onto the side of the road during the very, very rainy early part of the season. And those flints get stuck into your front tyre, and eventually they work their way in to create a puncture.
Everybody trying to catch at least a little sight of the cobblestones for the easiest way through. 21 seconds to Michael Schaar, and the peloton falls back now to 31 seconds. And it looks as though we've got a problem in the breakaway. I would not know who it is at the moment, but I suspect it might be the Breton rider.
Well, it looks like Matty Hayman is in second position. I would have expected to see Stuart O'Grady there, but it's now the pressure of Stegmans, followed by Matty Hayman, that's actually put a little bit of pressure onto the shoulder of the Breton rider and Stuart O'Grady. But the main field, if you look a little bit further back, are not far away.
And O'Grady may have felt it's not worth persisting, but he's dropped off along with the rider from France, Clément Koretsky of Bretagne, leaving 2 riders up front now. That's not a good sign. The peloton will take a lot of strength from this. Only 2 riders left. Stegmans has been strong all day and has always been doing a fair share of pacemaking. There's plenty of cobbled roads in Belgium where he lives. He probably trains over them every day of his career. Off we go, end of the 16th sector of Pavé. We're counting down, remember, so there's 15 sectors to come. Would you like a drink? No, I'm a bit busy at the moment. As we go back to the peloton, all looking at each other, just keeping a steady tempo. They know at the moment that this race is under control as far as the escapes are concerned, I think.
Yeah, well, as they leave section number 16, they now know it's almost every 6 miles now you hit a section of cobblestones, and they get more and more difficult. The next real important part is, I believe, the section of Mont-Saint-Pavel. It's a long section of cobblestones, and that section at Mont-Saint-Pavel is close to 2.5 kilometers long as well.
Well, there's been no respite in the pace of this race today. These boys have been hard at it right from the gun. They started with an incredible opening hour, which took them through almost 30 miles covered in the opening hour, 49 kilometers in fact it was. And then the second hour they slowed to 44, giving them an average of 47, 30 miles an hour for the first 2 hours of racing. And that's what Cancellara wanted, because he wanted his team, and there's been a crash down there. And this looks to me as though it's Bocic, the Slovakian rider Bocic, who's just gone down, Boris Bocic, but he's back. And he's back on his bike, so he should get back okay. Just watch on the bottom there as he simply ran out of road, Paul.
Yeah, I think he had a problem with his machine. He couldn't actually get around that corner, but he's recovered very quickly. He's going to use the convoy of cars to get himself back into the race. A lot of people actually said this name as a possible favourite, a dark horse for the win here this afternoon. He's ridden very, very well since the start of this season.
So, the National Road Race Champion Slovenia back in the thick of it now. These are the remnants of the breakaway. Just 2 riders are clear at the moment. Gert Stegmans, Matthew Hayman, and the gap is going up again. It's now 50 seconds at the advantage. Two lone leaders now out in front, and a lonely trail they cut to with 75 kilometres to go, which is about 47 miles. Stegmans and Heyman. The other 3 have formed an alliance at the back. O'Grady and Koretsky have been joined by Michael Sharp, but a blanket can go over the lot just at the moment. This is Sylvain. Oh, no, it's not. We've gone back to the leaders. I thought it was number 1. It's number 4. As we look up at the 2 leaders here, working pretty hard. They know they're not actually going anywhere at the moment. What they really want now is somebody to join them with some extra firepower.
Well, Stegmans, I think, riding one of the best races I've seen coming from him over the last couple of years. And Matty Hayman is one of those riders in the sport who dedicates himself to working for other people. But today, he's been given a free rein to ride his own race and put a little bit of pressure on everybody else.
So 58 seconds here, as these are the 3 chasers. Lovely example of a cantilever bridge there over the canal as we just breathed in. Stegmans now really has ridden like a man possessed today. He's been superb at the moment, and would love to fly the flag for Belgium in the absence of the defending champion and his friend Tom Bonen. O'Grady falling into the second group. He's hoping that Michael Shaw might drag them back up as the same cantilever bridge commands the visit of the peloton here, which is not very big at all when you think 198 riders started today. Note the canoeists down there and the life-saving equipment in case one of the riders went into the canal.
Well, that's one of the things about Gert Stegmans we're looking at here in first position. He's got an ideal situation for him because, yes, he doesn't have his team manager, his team leader there as we go into section 15. He is able to ride for himself, but if he gets caught, what he's doing here is he's toughening up the race for the Frenchman Sylvain Chavanel, who wears number 1 for Omega Pharma Quickstep.
Sector 2.4 kilometres long, this one, about 1.5 miles. Through between the red brick buildings here of northern France. They don't get the weather here like they get down the southern part of the country on the Côte d'Azur near Nice and Monaco. This is the working northern end, and this is for tough bike riders, believe me. These boys just concentrate. There's no conversation ever held in Paris-Roubaix. They are so concentrated on the race in hand.
So as you say, it's concentration. It's waiting for the next section of cobblestones, riding your leader into the top 5 or 10 positions. Radio Shack have taken a lot of pressure on their shoulders here this afternoon. You can start to see Matty Hayman, who we know is in great form this year, and a real stalwart for Team Sky. He too is in a very good tactical position because he can ride quite freely here, enjoy his race in the breakaway in Paris-Roubaix, and hope that Ian Stannard and even Geraint Thomas behind can take a big crash.
There's a big crash at the back as they've entered the same cobblestone section here. 1 or 2 riders are out at the moment too. I see that Filippo Pizzato is walking around, the team leader of Lampre, who was wanting a result today. There he is in the pink jersey, just checking out his bike.
Also a little bit further to the back of that group was Nicky Terpstra. He is the champion of Holland, and he was one of the pre-race favourites. And
this
there's
is
Geraint Thomas.
Again, Paul, this man has been in so much trouble. He looks a little bit pained there. Let's hope he can get back in the action very, very quickly. Wrestling with his bicycle here is Gaël Malacan.
Well, Ladagnou is number 81 there. He's the leader of Française des Jeux. But another rider going down, according to Race Radio, is Boris Bodzik. Just having got back from a mechanical incident, he's gone down again.
Well, I think the concern will be about Geraint Thomas there. He was getting up rather stiffly, but he looked basically okay. Now, there's a change of wheels required here, I think, here by Koretsky. There it is.
Well, that was a back flat tyre there. Man in the yellow jacket there is the neutral service mechanic. He'll give a wheel to anybody who has a mechanical incident out on the course. But always the problem with the neutral service vehicles, they've got one brand of wheels and they may not match up with the brand of bicycle that the rider they've got to look after. And that's a fairly slow wheel change that you've seen he's taken there.
Yeah, he felt a bit of frustration there, Clement Koretsky. It's his first Paris-Roubaix, but I'll tell you, he's had a great one. Let's have a look from here. This is how the crash happened. Just trying to see who was first to go down. In fact, it was somebody fell and clipped the back wheel of Geraint Thomas, I think, there.
That was Alfredo was the first rider to go down. It was a rider in the white jersey, Française des Jeux. The leader, in fact, Ladagnou, the leader of Française des Jeux, went down, getting mixed up with the crash of Alfredo a little bit earlier on. You know, this race is all about luck. Bad luck is the worst thing you can have.
Yeah, you do need a little bit of luck. There's no question about that. This is... well, it's rather like the British horse race, the Grand National. That you keep coming to all these huge fences, and if you get over them, you continue on. And that is the way I always feel here with Paris-Roubaix. If you clear the section of pavé without falling, you're still in with a chance of winning the event.
Well, you mentioned Clear. That's Andreas Clear at the back there, number 74 for Garmin Sharp. Number 131 riding up through is Filippo Pozzato. He was slowed down by that crash. He's in the pink jersey there, trying to battle his way back into the race of Paris-Roubaix. He got caught out last year with an accident when he was one of the pre-race favourites for this event.
Yeah, Manuel Quinziato here, good rider on BMC in the red, just passing out of our picture. He's also been caught. These boys are now having to use a lot of energy to rejoin the peloton. You can see it in the distance. This group should get back with 72 kilometres to go, but it's energy being used that it could have saved for the later attacks.
Well, that's the thing, Phil. Every time you have to make an effort like this to come back, it eats into the energy bank. And if you end up spending too much energy, you've got nothing left for the difficult section of cobbles down towards the end, like Mont-Saint-Pavel, which is a 5-star rated section of cobblestones, and, of course, the very, very difficult Carrefour de l'Arbre.
Champion of Spain on the far right, Francisco Ventoso. He's done well to get up to the front. He was off the back earlier. He's worked his way right through to the nose of the peloton on the far right of our picture. Meanwhile, Radio Shack are controlling the pace. The whole spread is now just 67 seconds. The O'Grady group of 3 is still clear in between. These are the leaders, Stegmans, and now it's Matty Hayman, who hasn't won a race, by the way, for 18 months. He isn't a big winner, but he is a big-hearted bike rider who is a good man to be up front with.
Well, he's one of those men that when you put together a team, you've got to think about guys who can win races, but you have to have men in the team who can help other riders in the team to get themselves the victory, and that's certainly what Matty Hayman is. This is 3rd and 4th position riders on the road, and Stuart O'Grady just moves across there to say to Michael Shaw, no, sorry, mate, I've been in the breakaway for quite some time here this afternoon. If you want to get back into this break, I'm just going to take a back seat for a while.
I think he has to. Michael Shaw, don't forget they've lost one of the riders there now because Clement Koretsky is out with that puncture. As the field now is closing in, only 2 riders are out front and only 2 riders now are chasing, and the spread across the field is now a mere 64 seconds as we head off into the dust of Roubaix again. Looking at Michael Shaw, he's still having his own private fencing competition here with the cobblestones as he takes these corners wide and clips the grass edges. He's just moments ago dispatched Stuart O'Grady off his back wheel. He's now free to try and catch these 2 riders who sit 73 seconds ahead of the peloton and again, Paul, are nudging out seconds over the field.
Yeah, it's almost a minute and a quarter advantage over the peloton. It's hard to believe how difficult this race has been since the very, very start. For 30 miles an hour covered in the first hour of the race, an average so far of the race has been 27.5 miles an hour average speed. There has been absolutely no respite since we came out of Compiègne this morning.
No, it's been a fabulous race all round, but brilliantly controlled up until now by Radio Shack, as this team holds this race together in favour of Fabien Cancellara. That is their plan. We'll see if it works out. A minute 12 seconds now. They'll feel they're still in control. You can see French flags and spur wheels all over the place today as the helpers try to keep their riders on their bikes with air in those tyres.
Over on the right-hand side in the blue helmet there, that's Bernie Eisel, probably thinking he's got a chance to ride for his own account here this afternoon. And this is damage at the back.
Well, this is Perish on 237. He was down on the floor, so he may have just come back to the tail of the group here. He was involved in that crash which involved Geraint Thomas, and we're not sure where he is at the moment. He was a bit slow to get up. He didn't look injured, but he was a bit stiff. And I'm hoping that he's got to the back of that field now. Pozzato is back in the group as they fan out on this sector of Pavé here, sector 14, with 68 kilometres left to race.
Well, riding up into 3rd position on the left-hand side there is Fabien Cancellara. He's getting all of his teammates doing the pacemaking. In the middle, in the pale blue jersey of Garmin Sharp, the former winner, Johan van Summeren.
Yes, and there's the speed we're doing, 50 kilometres an hour, 31 miles an hour. Johan van Summeren, who was a surprise winner when he won, and a very popular one. is now moving himself into a good position. These are the two leaders still, back on smooth road for the moment, settling down into his time trial style. He can ride a good time trial. Michael Shaw trying desperately to contact those two leaders for BMC.
Well, he's come through section 14 to go of cobbles. He's now on the long road up to Beuvry-la-Forêt, and at the end of that is the town of Orchy. And there are two very nasty sections of cobblestones. One of them, by the way, is called the section of the abattoir, and that is followed by the section of the cemetery.
Which is where we don't want to visit right now with some of these riders. Where you hear that Thor Hushovd has also had a flat tyre again, so he's still using a lot of energy in the wrong parts of this race just now. Time to take on a little bit of food for Stegmans, who's been a strong man up here.
There's Hushovd again battling back into the main field.
So Thor Hushovd, after yet another puncture, is hooked up with the tail of the peloton. So fine riding by the former world champion from Norway. So looking down from the helicopter now as we head up towards sector 13. Shaw isn't that far away from joining the two leaders, but the pressure very much on. There's the capture of Stuart O'Grady on sector 13.
So only three riders now at the head of affairs. The two leaders who are being chased by Michael Shaw. But as we get closer to Orchy, you'll start to see more and more little moves happening at the front.
Well, terrific riding by the Orica Green Edge man, but he's now back in the peloton and he's going to have his work cut out to hold on to this front group. This is Alessandro Bertacchi at the rear, the sprinter. He's been doing well to hang on to this group. He's not the most brilliant rider when it comes to Paris-Roubaix.
Well, Blanco here, and this looks like the shape of big Lars Boom. He's a great cyclocross rider. He's been champion of Holland in the cyclocross, been champion of the world in cyclocross for more than 10 years, and he has been dreaming about this bike race.
Yes, well, the Blanco team have had, ironically, a terrific season. Remember, they were one of the fallouts of the Lance Armstrong and general doping controversy of last year. As a result, the Rabobank pulled out of the sport, and so the riders, although they still receive a salary check from Rabobank, ride under a black and white jersey called Blanco, which means white. And they have had a tremendous season, winning a lot of bike races, which they never did when it was Rabobank.
Well, they've started well in the early part of this season with a great campaign. And they, I think, have had probably one of their best seasons for many, many years. And still, when you look at the front end of the peloton, it's the black, red and blue jerseys of Team Radio Shack Leopard.
Still looking ahead for Michael Shaw, the former Swiss under-19 and under-23 time trial champion, now putting that particular discipline to good effect here as he tries to reach the two front runners. Radio Shack left and right of the road, leading the charge, thinking of one man, Fabian Cancellara. When will they release him to go for gold? Only 63 kilometers to go, 40 miles.
He has to bide his time to make sure that he's got the energy to ride off the front end of the main field and get that gap. We calculated last week that when he raced at the front of the Tour of Flanders, he generated almost 500 watts over the last 45 minutes of that race. That really is a phenomenal level of wattage to be putting out for a long period of time, especially after 120 miles of racing.
Off sector 13 now as the riders grab for feeding bottles here. 69 seconds the gap. There's only three riders in front, and at the moment one has to say this race is still going the way for Fabian Cancellara. These are the two leaders. Ledanu is now having to chase at the back after a tumble as we're heading on to sector 12 now with just under 60 kilometers to go. Little less than 38 miles to the finish. One or two bunny hops there. They take the most precarious way around the streets here when they've got a wide road as well. The peloton coming together. There is sector 12 entry now for the two leaders. It's still Matthew Heyman on the left and Gert Stegmans.
One of the landmarks, that little house on the right-hand side. You know that when you come to the edge of that house, it's a right-hand turn and onto this very nasty section of cobblestones here at Orchy.
So there we are, 72 seconds. They've just lost a second. Well, we've seen the dangers of Paris-Roubaix today for sure. The crash there, which involved the French rider Ledanu, because he finished 5th in the Tour of Flanders, and three riders of the Vacansoleil team being involved, and a Russian rider as well. You really have to be so alert here. Ledanu is now off the back and trying to rejoin this peloton.
Yep, a little bit of battling for position. There is Ian Stannard at the front on the left-hand side, and that white jersey, he's had up and down chances here this afternoon, but he knows it's important to get to the front for this section of cobblestones. Look out for the house with the red bricks on the right-hand side, and know that you've got a 90-degree bend to the right and straight onto the cobblestones. Bernie Eisel is the rider with the black and blue helmet at the front there, looking over his shoulder. He's looking for a teammate to help out.
Bernie Eisel, the rider who used to be the lead-out man for Mark Cavendish until this year. Mark Cavendish chose to leave to join a Belgian team from Sky. The Omega Pharma Quick-Step team is having a great season as well, and Bernie Eisel staying with Sky, where he seems to be very happy. This is 3 stars, this section at Orchy. Not very long, just under a kilometre. And there's still a lot of grimacing going on at the front of that peloton. The pressure still very much on. And still at the back, the sprinter from Italy there, Alessandro Patacchi, doing well to hang on. And he's one of the fallers who's now got himself back from Vacansoleil. That's Wesley Creeder. So he was down on the ground. He's rejoined.
Well, you can see these riders not having to go through the chaos. Ted de la Course, the head of the bike race, Geert Stegmans and Matt Heyman. Heyman is the rider in the black jersey with Team Sky written across his shorts. They've finished the first part of this cobblestone section, and as they turn left now, there's a few more cobblestones, and in fact, Michael Schar has almost made it.
Exit of Sector 12, 11 sections of cobblestones to come, 58 kilometres to race, and Michael Schar of Switzerland and Team BMC is about to rejoin the leaders.
And how cruel this race is, because when you come off that section of cobblestones there, you think, oh, a bit of respite, then you turn left and you're straight back onto them. And this is the chemin known as the Chemin de la Cimetière.
It's been a terrific chase by Michael Schar here. He hasn't got there yet, mind you. He's desperately close to it. And the gap has come down at the same time to 63 seconds. A long straight section of cobblestones here. The exit banner flying in the sky ahead of these 2 leaders. Shortly to be 3. Final effort by Michael Schar. Now we've got 3 men at the front, and I think the front 2 will welcome the arrival of Schar rather than the whole peloton. Segment 12 finished. It's in 2 sections, as we've now seen, and 3 riders clear.
A little bit of smooth road now with 58 kilometers to go to the finish, and now the most important thing is we're going to have 2 very nasty sections bolted together. The section of Orchy à Bercé, and then Mont-Saint-Pavel, the 5-star rated, and I'd almost forgotten about Damien Gaudin. He's caught halfway now between the 3-man leading group and the peloton.
Well, can he do what Michael Schar has just done? It was a terrific effort by the Swiss rider. As he crashes his way over the cobblestones. He's not that far behind, maybe 40 seconds, if that, maybe half a minute. Tried to get that drink, missed it.
Wasn't paying attention. He was looking over his shoulder, and he waited to the last minute to try and take on board that bottle. You've got to keep drinking all the time, especially in between the cobblestone sections, and especially if you're trying to ride across the gap like this, you've got to concentrate all of the time.
Well, as I was telling you before, we got interrupted by the crash, as we see sadly here the sight of Stuart O'Grady being tailed off the back now as he enters Sector 12. So that's a sad sight, but he really has had a terrific Paris-Roubaix, the former winner of this race. While the Paris-Nice winner, Gaudin, prologue winner, is still trying to get up front and catch those leaders. There we are, the catch outside the Australian flag. .49 seconds. These are the riders in the chase group. Ian Stannard, William Bonnet, Guarnieri of Astana, Brechel, who did have an accident also in there, and there was a 5th rider I missed there in that breakaway. But they're trying to get across the gap, but there is reaction now from the field, as you can see, being stretched out by Team Sky, Radio Shack rather. And you can see these 5 leaders have actually eased up a little bit.
Well, Matty Brechel is the rider in 2nd position there in the black and yellow jersey of Team Saxo Bank Tinkoff, and he's always liked this bike race here this afternoon. Came up against a little bit of friction when he was on the same team as Fabian Cancellara a couple of years ago, and felt that Fabian Cancellara got much more support from the team management than he did himself, which is why he might be looking for a little bit of revenge here this afternoon.
Well, there's been a few people mentioning Brechel as a possible winner today of this race, and he's certainly feeling frisky just now. This is the group trying to reach the leaders, but they're not going to see the leaders before the peloton sees them, I think. Jacques Courage, that I think is a tribute to Laurent Jalabert, who has been involved with an accident with a vehicle near where he lives and has been quite badly injured. I hope he is recovering well.
Yeah, he was just riding his bike not too very far away from home, and a car came up and took him from behind, and he was very seriously taken to hospital. In fact, he was unconscious for a moment until the services arrived to look after him. Sector number 11 to go now of cobblestones. Orchy to Bercy, a distance of 2.6 kilometres of cobblestones.
Martin Elmager, the man that was in the breakaway, the fifth man, now being swept up by the peloton. Sky rider Stannard being caught, the Belgian flag indicating slight tailwind for the boys now. These are the three leaders. It's when the lead cars, you hope, drive a long way ahead, because otherwise they cover you in a dust storm. This is the chase by Godin. And he really is aggressive. The prologue winner of Paris-Nice, that in itself was a surprise, but he is having a very good season.
We're getting into the section of Paris-Roubaix now where it's very, very complicated to figure out where to make the move, because you're zigzagging across the north of France. Sometimes you've got a crosswind, sometimes you've got a headwind, and now, as you just noticed a few moments ago, the riders are picking up a fairly strong tailwind, but it's getting tough for these three riders now. You can see the body language of Stegeman starting to roll his shoulders a fraction. That means it's getting a little bit more difficult for him to keep the pressure on his pedals and keep the pace nice and high.
A little bit of a picture breakup we're experiencing there, but just at the moment, I think the sound probably getting in the cameras as well down there on the course. 33 seconds is the gap now. It's slowly but surely being hauled up, but there is the breakaway, tantalizingly close to go down. That will put us 4 up front.
But the gap to the main field is 33 seconds, so there's only 15 seconds from Godin to the three leaders, and the main field, we're all on the same section of cobblestones now. You can judge the effort required to pull this all back together.
There's the Swiss flag flying, the gap still coming down, and the race referees are now taking all of the vehicles off the course to leave these real gaps now, and make sure the riders can't be tempted by the carrot of a car to bridge the gaps. This is Elmager on the front for the new IAM team.
He still will not give up at all there. He looks over his shoulder. Stannard is trying to stay on his slipstream, but he's battling from all of the bad luck he's had in the early part of this race. We go back to the Frenchman now, Godin. There are the three leaders. He's almost made it. It's not much more now than 5 seconds the gap.
Well, great effort by the young Frenchman, this, and yet another example of the great renaissance here in France of the French pro cyclists. Still looking for the winner of Paris-Roubaix. We haven't had one for an awful long time. The last one was Frédéric Guédon, now retired, back in 1997. And this boy will become an overnight hero if he were to win this race today. His back wheel slipping all over the cobblestones, the wind coming from the rider's left.
Well,
pushing them across.
Radio Shack again, just keeping the pressure on. Fabian Cancellara a little bit further back. Just in second position is Bernie Eisel of Austria.
Everybody would be waiting now in the last 50 kilometers of the racing and asking themselves the question where Fabian Cancellara is going to make his move as they start to fan out here. Still plenty of riders willing to take part in the charge towards Roubaix at the minute in time for sure. And here, down the dead centre of our picture, comes Sylvain Chavanel of Omega Pharma Quickstep, looking for a wheel to get into.
Up into third position in the black and red jersey of Team BMC. That is Thor Hushovd grimacing. But the man gnashing out the tempo right now is Fabian Cancellara, realising we're getting to the really grippy part of this race. And he is dreaming of the cobblestones at Mont-Saint-Pével. Look at the damage now.
This is Cancellara on the front. Chavanel's seen the warning signs, has raced up alongside him. The helicopter picture there showed how the increase in speed has cracked the peloton itself. Now the strong men will out, and this is where we've got to see the riders with any hope move to the front, because if they allow Cancellara his chance, he said earlier in the press this week, it's no good riders trying to sit on my back wheel and think they can win. And look at this. Cancellara, Chavanel goes through now.
Well, the gaps are starting. 31 there. You just noticed that is Torhusov, the leader of Team BMC. Everyone's craning around the outsides to see if this race is nice and safe. Fabian Cancellara, he doesn't care though now. What he wants to do is do the damage on this section of cobblestones, and the damage is being done. It's elimination by the rear.
Well, he's brought the gap down to 16 seconds. The two-time winner of Paris-Roubaix looking to join some of the greats by winning it 3 times. It won't be a record if he does win. That's still held by Roger de Vlaming, and last year joining him, Tom Bonen. Sector 11 of the cobblestones now. This will be Sinkeldam, Raymond Sinkeldam of Team Argos. New name on the block as he tries to steer off the front.
Well, Cancellara put in an effort there. In fact, Godin still hasn't quite made the junction to these 3 leaders, and that's because of the pressure that's being put on there by Michael Shah, and he's the rider in the red jersey of Team BMC. But looking back, there's the main field. There's 10 to 12 seconds separating the whole of this race. Godin just makes the junction.
So, as we go into the last 50 kilometres of racing, Damien Godin joins the leaders. We now have 4 riders up front, but the gap is down to just 13 seconds. Mons-en-Pavel, the peloton have reached it all together here. They've swept up the leaders now as they come inside 48 kilometres to go. Nicky Terpstra, the champion of Holland, is driving it. This is the second of 3 5-star stretches of pavé.
Yeah, this is a very long section, 1.8 miles. That's Ian Stannard on the back of the group there in the white jersey, champion of Great Britain. This is a very difficult section of cobblestones. It has been the place where in the past riders have laid down their foundations for victory, but you can see the flag over on the left-hand side, the flag of the United Kingdom. It's a crosswind here. You've got to ride diagonally alongside the rider in front of you if you want to get some respite from the wind.
Well, Luca Paolini was quickly to take up the pace there. As we go back up to the leaders here, we're going to lose them in the dust storm that's blowing up now from the riders and from the vehicles around them.
Everybody knows how hard this section of cobblestones is. That's Godin in the green jersey in second position. Lars Boom is the rider on the front for Team Blanco, and just behind him the champion of Holland. Now you think you've come off this section of cobblestones. Well, no, there's just a little bit of smooth road in between the two, and after this right-hand bend you're right back onto the cobblestones again of this very long section of Mons-en-Pavel.
Lars Boom, 2 wins already this year for the Dutchman on the front. One was a time trial in the Tour of the Mediterranean where he held the lead in that race for just a day after he got the lead. And he also won a stage of a race in France called the Tour de Haute-Var, where he finished second overall. But this will be a result for him. It's perfectly suitable to the way he rides a bike. He's been multi-world cyclocross champion, and that's the winter sport where you race over cobblestones and fields. He was 12th in this race last year.
And he also is very keen to get himself onto the velodrome in Roubaix, but he's actually raced and won on the velodrome in Roubaix before in a cyclocross event that was based around here in the heart of Roubaix.
Real talent, and he's in a danger position. I'm sure Cancellara will have noted his position at the front. He rides for this Team Blanco cycling at the moment. The wind switching around with the course now, head, tail and cross. They're getting everything thrown at them. And this has been a real fighting Paris-Roubaix today. To be in the lead, you've had to work so hard, and then it's all wiped out by the chase.
Well, this is the 10th section of cobblestones to the finish. There's still a kilometre to go before they get to the end. And it's a tricky one too. Fortunately, it's fairly dry here this afternoon, because this section of cobblestones, when you get a wet Paris-Roubaix, it is so very treacherous. It's basically only a farm track.
Yes, that's Crash Corner where they just came around there in the wet. A few riders don't make the corner. Okay, today it's just the dust is the problem. Continuing to put the pressure on. This is a little bit of trouble at the back now as riders find that the final lifting of the odd half a kilometre is proving just too much for them. We started a counter-attack here. This is good riding by Omega Pharma Quick-Step.
Well, they said they had to come up with some special tactics if they wanted to outwit Fabian Cancellara this afternoon, and they've got some very good chances. The man in second position is the man they'd like to set it up for. That's Nicky Terpstra, but also the Frenchman Sylvain Chavanel, who's got fine form this month.
And sadly, Johan van Summeren has just had a flat tyre. I don't know if we're going to see pictures of it, but he's off the back of the group now. That really is bad luck. Looking at the youngster from Germany here, John Degenkolb, who had a great season last year. and now still living with the best here at the latter stages of Paris-Roubaix.
Look at the damage Mons-en-Pavel has done to this bike race one more time. I've just noticed Fabian Cancellara taking a little bit of a back seat at the moment, keeping an eye on how affairs are running. He's seen those two riders start to move, and that's Fabian Cancellara in third place, just coming across the gap quite smoothly.
12 riders in the lead at the moment on the split. And we're hearing also that Godin and Guarnieri, they have been dropped at the back of the race.
Before there, Stegman's, a lot of work has been done. This is getting to the end of the section of cobblestones now, so that's 10 to go have been done, and they're now onto the road. Mons-en-Pavel is the small village just behind them, but as you can see, that Mons-en-Pavel once again as a 5-star rated section of cobblestones, it's done its damage.
It's pulled 12 men clear at the moment as they try to get clear with 45 kilometers left to ride. This is where we expected the big boys to make sure they were in a position to win as they leave sector 10.
Well, that looks like the shape of Godin in the green jersey, battling himself back in there, and he's got a teammate up alongside him. I would expect that to be Sebastian Turgot, the rider who finished in second place in this race last year. But now this is a very good, serious, organised working group.
Cancellara comes through, just does enough and no more than that at the moment. Assessing now who has come across that stretch of cobblestones in good condition. There's one or two scrabbling to make contact, but the gap is clearly opening from the air now. This might be the reshaping of the leading group. Ian Stannard there, just passing out of our picture. And good to see that Hushoft has made it here, still looking very good, but these boys are now behind. And he's looking a little bit beaten to me, to be honest. And Boysenhagen, that's a surprise.
Well, you know, the pressure was put on the Mons-en-Pavel section of cobblestones, and that's why these guys have been put on the back foot a fraction. 44 kilometers, 27 miles of racing left to go. Stegman's, he was in the breakaway a little bit earlier on, but that is where the race is happening, up the road.
Yes, and it looks to me as though that group is currently given up there. They can't cope with that final showdown on the cobblestones. We've got 6 riders in the group, and we've got 7 riders trying to get up to them. That would be 11 riders in the lead, and that might be enough because we've certainly got Fabian Cancellara here. Second off on our left there.
Yep, Cancellara, I think, biding his time for the moment. He's seen that this race now is getting decanted a little bit. The best riders are starting to come right up to the top of the race this afternoon, and Cancellara has not yet made a move, but then he's not done anything wrong so far. Tactically, he's played everything to perfection, but as you'll notice now, he doesn't have any teammates alongside him. This is Sylvain Chavanel with his hand in the air.
Yeah, now he's just joined the front runners here, Chavanel, I think, as they've come together. And just seeing other riders there who've also got up. Heinrich Hausler is just in front of him. That's a good result for the Australian. There he is, number 151, Hausler. Well, Chavanel's read this race very, very well indeed. And Gael Malacan is also there. Oh, these are the chasers that they're saying that is. And they've got Alexander Christopher, the other Norwegian there, has got into this chase group. He's a big danger for the future, that youngster.
Well, for Sylvain Chavanel, he's going to get feel as if he's in prison now because he's got 2 teammates in this leading group on the road, so he won't be able to participate in the chasing behind his teammates as we see the tactical advantage move over to Omega Pharma Quick-Step.
This looks like Vandenberg is the Omega rider on the front, who's been doing a lot of work, been giving his head on the team this year. Not pushing over, they're not panicking, they know there's still a lot of rough road lies ahead. They're not committing themselves totally yet. They keep looking around, see who's here, see who's doing the work. Still got 42 kilometers to go, 26 miles to race to the finish, and we've still got 1 5-star section left. This is Mérigny-Avelin, sector 9. Just under a kilometre, this one.
But this section of cobblestones will give these riders a chance to build up on their advantage. Look at the face of this rider here from Omega Pharma Quickstep. He realizes this is a good chance to try and lay down the foundations for his teammate. And his teammate there in third position, Nicky Terpstra, one of the pre-race favourites. But Cancellara is in this group. He's nice and comfortable for the moment, hoping that he's not going to have any bad luck, because just looking down this long line of riders, he doesn't have any teammates alongside him anymore. And that was the one thing that these teams wanted to do on this section number 9 to go Mérigny to Avelin. Only a 2-star rated section of cobblestones, but after having been on the bike for over 130 miles right now, every section of cobblestones hurts.
Absolutely, and the riders who have missed out at the moment in this split amongst the star names, Sylvain Chavanel, Thor Hushov's not here, neither is his teammate Taylor Phinney, and the two riders on Team Sky, Ian Stannard and Boysenhagen, all missed out in the second group at the moment.
But Bernie Eisel has made it over on the right-hand side, and a man who previously a winner. There's a problem at the back for one of the Frenchmen who stopped very quickly there.
That was Gael Malacan, who's had a little problem at the back of the race, but these boys go on. There are now 12 riders in the lead here as they continue at 41 kilometres to go. In fact, it was Sebastian Tergo, his teammate, there's two of them up there, who has had a back wheel problem. And it looks as though Tergo, who is the real Frenchman for a result, he's got terrific form, could well be picked up here by the second group.
Yep, second last year. There is the second group on the road, and he's going to be imprisoned in that group, and that was very unfortunate for him to have a mechanical at that point in time. But look how the race now is becoming dangerous. There are no cars behind.
So at 40 kilometres left to ride, the leading group is now down to just a dozen men, as they now open the gap if they can, but they don't look very organised down there at the moment as they try to hold off the rest of Paris-Roubaix. Looking at the return now of Sylvain Chavanel in the second group. He's just had the flat tyre and he's now trying to rejoin that second group while they're chasing some 12 riders up front.
Wilfred Peters there, podium finisher in Paris-Roubaix himself, and now we can see the front end of the race as we come to the next section of cobblestones. This is Pont-Thibault to Enevelin. It's 8 sections of cobblestones to go, 3-star rating, and it's 1.4 kilometres long.
Stein Vandenberg setting the pace on the cobblestones here. This has been a classic move by Omega Pharma Quickstep, who are so brilliantly guided all the time by Patrick Lefebvre and Wilfred Peters, the two directors here. This is 3 stars and it's not that long, but it's a chance to hurt those in the breakaway. And they have the new man on the blocks, Zdeněk Stybar here, twice the world cyclocross champion from the Czech Republic, in this front group. Constantly looking over the shoulders here to see who is chasing all of the time.
Well, they've got themselves a little gap. Tête de la course means the front end of the bike race, and they're using every section of cobblestones to try and prize open an advantage. But very shortly, in about 10 kilometres time, Phil, we've got some really nasty cobblestone sections. They're all riding away one by one from number 21. There he is, and that, of course, is Fabian Cancellara. Just in front of him is the rider from the Czech Republic, Stybar, a great cyclocross rider, and starting to ride pretty well in races like Paris-Roubaix.
This is Terpstra, the champion of Holland, just jumping into our camera a little bit. Chavanel has got to the back of that group, so he's a good chase. He's got onto the second group, but at the moment there's a few guys in this breakaway who've got their teammates up front and they're not very interested in running it down. I see AG2R have got themselves Steve Chanel up there, number 171. As we go up the road to see Lars Bohm doing a little bit of work here along with Stein Vandenberg. Just trying to work out who the Orica Green Edge rider is taking the lead at the moment. He's the only rider in the breakaway for the team. As we head off sector 8, 7 sections of cobbles to go now. Terpstra hanging on to the back wheel, I think it's of Lars Bohm at the moment.
And that's Boom there, Lars Boom wearing number 51. Number 21 is Fabian Cancellara. He appears to be playing somewhat of a waiting game here this afternoon. He does realise that there are two very difficult sections of cobblestones a little bit further up the road. The section at Sizouin and Borgel, and then of course the very, very famous last five-star section of cobblestones, and that is of course the Pavé de l'Arbre.
8 riders down there at the moment, so they've been splitting up amongst themselves. They've been reduced now to just 8 riders, 36 kilometers left to go. So all on the little radios talking to the back of the team cars, but the result at the moment is they're still not going clear here because they're not coordinated, because Fabian Cancellara is still in this group. As we look down from the helicopter now, 33.5 kilometers to go. Everybody looking and waiting for a move by Cancellara, except these 4 riders here. Sebastian Langeveld, number 3 in line here. Stein Vandenberg has gone clear also. These are the boys who are trying to get clear now. Go down, we've seen in the action Sepp van Mark trying to steal a march over the remnants of this breakaway.
Well, they keep looking over their shoulders. They're trying to ascertain what sort of advantage they've got over the chasers. We're coming now into the small town of Templeuve, and there's a long section of cobblestones out of Templeuve as we go past the very famous windmill, the Moulin de Vertin. This section of cobblestones is around about half a kilometre long, but it lends itself to the preparation for the cobblestones in Sizouin.
Number 5 is Zdeněk Stybar, twice the world cyclocross champion in the colours of the Czech Republic. Now a very good road rider here, and should be happily suited to the rough ride over the cobblestones with his winter pastime. But at the moment, these boys are trying to repair the damage, and they've put the train on the front here. Fabulous Cancellara to drive now to try and pull them back into the race. Eisel has got his wheel at the moment, followed by Terpstra. Lars Boom as we swing on to the next section of cobblestones, number 7.
Well, this is a chance that we'll get to see the big windmill, the Moulin de Vertin, as there is no real organisation. This is the next group further down the road. That's Sylvain Chavanel on the front with the red, white and blue bands around his shoulders there, indicating he's a former champion of France in the road race. He's also former champion of France in the individual time trial as well. This is the leading group of 4, with Godin being the rider just on the back.
Little short section this, a mere 2 stars, but it's done enough to hurt Damien Godin at the back of the race here as he tries to maintain things. Sepp van Mark is just in front of him in the Blanco colours, and just short and sweet that one, probably not so sweet as they bounce off. All 4 hanging on, and a quick recovery by the rather aggressive rider at the back here from Europcar, flying the flag for France just now. Right at the front of the race is Stein Vandenberg. The only 2 races he ever won in his life was a stage and then the overall of the Tour of Ireland, right out at the start of his career back in 2007.
Well, this group is only about 10 seconds behind, and in fact, if we look around the corner, we'll probably see that leading group. There's the leading group of 4 riders. It's 10 seconds to this second group, and Fabian Cancellara is not out of it yet because he's only a further 10 seconds behind. And in 6 kilometres or 4 miles time, we've got 2 very difficult sections of cobblestones bolted together. That may be where Cancellara is thinking about making his move, because those cobblestones are in a slight false flat, and that's where he could use his power to get the gap.
He's feeling the pressure, I think, of being a marked man, and that's why these riders have got away from him. All the other boys are trying to keep an eye on him, keep him under control. He can't work out quite what to do about this. The breakaway, which was 12, now split into 3 groups on the road. The peloton not out of it yet, with Sylvain Chavanel in there. But it's difficult decision time, and it's the price you pay when you are the outstanding favourite to win. He has to chase everybody now because there's nobody left to help him. Mind you, if you remember Cancellara's victory in the past, and if you only have to go back 7 days to his win in the Tour of Flanders, the power is certainly in that man's body.
Yeah, so the first part of the race, the 4-man group, chased by the 4-man group and another 4-man group, the first 12 on the road, are only separated by a mere 20 seconds. We're lining up now to head into the town of Sizouin.
So we're inside 20 miles to go now, 31 kilometres remaining. There is still no obvious winner on this year's Paris-Roubaix, but one thing is certain now, Fabian Cancellara knows he has no friends in this race, so he's going to have to work it out for himself. In 2 weeks, the Epic Cycle Series, presented by Michelob Ultra, continues on the NBC Sports Network with La Doyenne, Liège-Bastogne-Liège. It's a complete test of a cyclist's ability. Liège-Bastogne-Liège in 2 weeks on the NBC Sports Network. We are now looking at Fabian Cancellara. He has had to shed himself of the chasers behind. He's got to do it all himself as he's crossing the gap at 30 kilometers to go to the leaders. And they'll be in all sorts of disarray once this man from Switzerland rejoins them at the front. But it's taken a lot of effort, Paul, and he isn't exactly streaking across this gap.
No, well, that's because of the pressure at the front here coming from Stein van Bergen. He now has realised this is an important moment in the race here this afternoon. But Cancellara will catch these riders, Phil. Just as we get into the small town of Sizouin, you go straight across the town square and onto a slightly uphill section of cobblestones. This man is really class act this afternoon. Fabian Cancellara, he's made the junction.
We're looking for the next double sector at Sizouin of 2 sections of cobblestones, and they are connected and they are really, really hard as we've just gone past the 30 kilometers to go sign. It's no stranger now, this part of the route, to Fabian Cancellara. He's won this race twice. Cancellara trying now to reach the leaders as we see the Blanco rider and Stein Vandenberg go there as he joins forces now. These 2 riders trying to just hang off the inevitable, I think, but they're doing the right thing.
Well, they've made a good move. They've got about 20 seconds over the group that now contains Fabian Cancellara, who's made his comeback. Sepp van Mark and Stein Vandenberg, they have made the move here as they head towards the town of Sizouin. The grimaces are on their faces, but I do believe that Fabian Cancellara, Phil, when we get to this next section of cobblestones, he's going to try and lay down the law.
Piling the pressure on Stein Vandenberg now, who was hoping that the team would give him the leadership role in the absence of Tom Bonen. And it's been shared with him and Chavanel, but it looks as though they knew something because he is riding really very strongly just now. And Sepp van Mark, rather, who has joined him, he's on Team Blanco. Last year he was with the Garmin Barracuda team. Switched teams, and looks like he's found himself a new pair of legs at the same time. Sebastian Langeveld on the left of our picture. Greg van Avermaet in the red, all looking over the shoulders. They know that the man who's charging up behind them is none other than Fabian Cancellara. He has now joined them on the back. Terpstra is coming through the cars to join the chase group.
Yep, he wants to get himself, but again, look how well Omega Pharma Quickstep have run this race here this afternoon, because they are the team who've got the most strength in numbers. They've got 3 riders in the kill at the race at the moment. They've got Nicky Terpstra joining this group, and further up the road they've got a man in the breakaway.
Great tactics. They did say in the paper they needed to join forces with another team in the race. Well, that I was amazed to read it, because really that is totally against the rules to form coalitions. But I have to say that Quickstep have ridden a great race today, always having men in the action and playing a major card now with Stein Vandenberg.
So they're now in the heart of the town of Sizouin. As soon as they leave the town, they'll be onto those 2 sections of cobbles which are bolted together. They're very difficult. They've got a couple of false flats in there, and they set themselves up to the next section after that of Confin-en-Pévèle. Long sections now, difficult sections, and if you've got the legs and the false flats, that's where you can open up the gap very, very dramatically.
The labouring figure there of Damien Godin, the 26-year-old. Trying to get clear before the cobble start, and the counter-attacks have come again. And Cancellara a little bit slow to react because he's been hit so many times, and he's only just come up to this group, don't forget. He's going to be tired for the moment. I think if they want to beat Cancellara, they're doing everything right just now.
Well, they're throwing whatever they can at him, trying to weaken him, trying to isolate him. He's got caught out a little bit by that acceleration. I think he's biding his time. He's waiting for the moment to put in the killer blow. This is the next section of cobblestones. This is the section 6 to go. Sizouin to Bourgel, and bolted together with Bourgel to Wanahan.
First sector, a mere 3 stars here, but the cobbles are hurting more than ever as the crowd cheer them through. 30 seconds the gap between the Cancellara group and the boys up front. But take a look at this now, because this is real work being done by Sepp van Mark at the back And an absolute powerhouse piece of riding here by Stein Vandenberg, who's only won 2 races back in '07, but he is a very strong workhorse.
Well, section number 6 to go. This is the group of Fabian Cancellara now, but everybody is queuing up to see, will this man make some kind of a move? And the clouds and the smoke on the right-hand side, as you look at the colours, that's obviously for the Belgian riders in this race here this afternoon.
Well, the work is all being done by Vacances Soleil, just at the moment out in front there. Juan Antonio Fletcher drives the race along, another man with a love for the classics. He used to ride on the British Sky team, now he's gone over to Vacances Soleil, and he is showing his colours again in a major race. Been on the podium here in the past. He was second in 2007, and that's the best finish ever, by the way, by a Spanish rider, along with Hugo Poblet. And I'm sad to tell you that Hugo Poblet won this race in 1958, passed away this weekend at the age, I think, of 84. So he'll be missed very sadly indeed.
This is the chaos now of Paris-Roubaix. They're moving away now from this second part of the 6th section of cobblestones to go, Sizouin to Bourgel. The slop drops slightly downhill now. These two riders, they must be starting to think we could create a bit of a surprise here this afternoon, because they're leading the Fabian Cancellara group by almost 40 seconds.
So easy to see the spread from the air. The riders themselves get a different view, of course, because the crowd often obscure their vision. But is it Fletcher now continues to drive this race on the front, the man for the classics for sure. He's going to have to do something special now, because it's a very serious situation here for Fabian Cancellara. 40 seconds the spread. Fletcher doing what we always expect from this Spanish rider, one of the few Spanish riders who rides a brilliant classic race, and this year already he's had a 5th place finish in the Belgian Classic Ghent-Wevelgem.
Off the cobblestones now, Tête de la Course, Sepp van Mark riding for Team Blanco there, concentrating, wondering whether or not he's going to put in one of his best ever performances in a classic here this afternoon. As you can see, Juan Antonio Fletcher has the bit between his teeth in the yellow and blue jersey of Vacances Soleil, chased by Greg van Avermaet, and still paying the waiting game in 4th position there is Fabian Cancellara, but race radio telling us that Luca Paolini has just had a mechanical incident at the back.
Flat tyre for him, and that's really a shame. He's on form, and the flag of the United States flying on the left of the road there, but sadly no Taylor Phinney in this group. 41 seconds back, the group Cancellara. And we're watching at these riders now. The teammate of Phinney is here, though, Greg van Avermaet, and he packs a good sprint. This is the rather labouring figure here of Damien Gaudin, but it's very effective riding style. But it looks as though Nicky Terpstra is going to pull the chase group up to him here.
Terpstra in the red, white and blue, riding for Team Omega Pharma Quickstep, but riding here a defensive game because he's got his own teammate Stein Vandenberg in the leading group.
So Gaudin almost put back in his place there, and he will be very shortly. Sebastian Langeveld for Orica Green Edge is still here as well. Again, the gaps are always opening here. Cancellara getting a little bit slow to react at the moment. He's not looking like the winner of the 111th Paris-Roubaix at the moment, as we see 2 riders out front, 38 seconds up, and we're inside 15 miles left to go. This is Nicky Terpstra still trying to organise a bit of a chase here to catch those 2 riders off the back. It's noticeable, Paul, that Cancellara's dodging wheels here now.
Yeah, he's on his own, has been on his own for the last 20 or 30 kilometres, or 18 miles or so. He's going to have to play a very crafty game. He knows what he has to do if he wants to win this bike race here this afternoon. He's not been put under that much pressure, I don't feel, although one wonders how those 2 crashes he had during the week leading up to Paris-Roubaix have weakened his body a fraction.
Still Gaudin setting the pace for Europe car there, dreaming of a French victory. A little bit of dreaming still to be done at the moment, with Vandenberg and Sepp van Mark out in front. This is Langeveld flying the flag for Australia, although he is of course a Dutchman. 36 seconds the gap, and that's what 36 seconds looks like from the air.
Well, it's still a little bit of disarray in that group in 2nd place on the road. We're looking back there to the 3rd group on the road, the group of Sylvain Chavanel. Chavanel sitting in 6th position there in the pale blue jersey, riding still very comfortably. He was an extremely strong bike rider last week, but Cancellara now makes that little bit of a move.
This is the big move. He's put all the pressure on here now. He's going to test just how strong these riders are. He always wants to make his move near the end, but it's usually from the front position. He's not in that position at the moment. He's now got to give it his best shot, and can they hang on to him?
Well, he really has thrown the cat amongst the pigeons here this afternoon. Van Avermaet is trying to respond there. He's a few bike lengths off the back wheel of Fabian Cancellara, and look at the damage that he's done. He's been waiting, he's been biding his time now. This is the first blow. He lays down the foundations of trying to annihilate this race.
Well, it has hurt the other riders here. That Langeveld on the right, go down. He's gone as we crash onto the second sector of cobbles number 6.
But look at the gap. All of a sudden it's come down to 29 seconds, and Fabian Cancellara will use, I believe, the next section of cobbles at Canfin-en-Pavel to try and close down that gap. And look at that. Greg Van Avermaet is the rider in the red jersey there, and he cannot quite get to the wheel of Cancellara. But it's Saibar, the rider from the Czech Republic, the cyclocross rider, is sitting right on the wheel of Fabian Cancellara.
Cancellara will not be happy with this, taking across a man of Saibar's reputation. But this is another fine car being played by Omega Pharma Quickstep, and they have no reason to help Cancellara at the moment, not with Vandenberg up the road, his teammate. It's advantage Omega just now with some good tactics being laid here, but this man has the strength and he's getting on with the job in hand. These are the two front runners.
Look at the gap, down to 22 seconds. They don't seem to have the energy now in their pedaling style. When you look at the fluidity of Fabian Cancellara, those legs are going over magnificently.
So if you've got the talent, talent in the end will out, and Cancellara is now making a move which he hopes will put him back in with a chance of winning Paris-Roubaix for a third time. He's 22 kilometers away and 20 seconds behind. The ultimate bike for the Paris-Roubaix. See more at www.bmc-switzerland.com. The spread now 2 on 2 here as the two leaders have just looked over the shoulder. Cancellara is closing in on Sepp van Mark and Stijn Vandenberg, and they're bringing across another dangerous man in the Czech Republic, Saibar.
What I think could go to the advantage of Fabian Cancellara, you just see that little farm on the left-hand side. That's where the left-hand turn is. You can see the people over in the field on the left-hand side. Fabian Cancellara will pick up a tailwind on the slightly uphill section of Canfin-en-Pavel, and that may well give him the advantage with his turn of speed to open up a fresh gap.
Agonizingly slowly as they come together at around about 50 kilometers an hour of time trialing. He's almost on, and he's going to do it just inside 20 kilometers, 12 miles from the finish. Saibar taking a few deep breaths and will no doubt thank Cancellara for the free journey across the gap. But there aren't many can hold on to the back wheel of Fabian Cancellara as we swing on to the Canfin-en-Pavel. 1.8 kilometers and 4 stars the offering.
Yes, it's a tough section of cobblestones, this, and he saw the end of a ride by George Hincapie a couple of years ago when a young Tom Bonin was the uprising star on the block at just 21 kilometers, 21 years of age. 20 kilometers to go to the finish now, 12.5 miles of racing, and shortly this climb will start to make itself felt by these riders.
Well, that was an epic chase. The race favourite, the outstanding race favourite, put on the defensive there by 12 riders. In the end, had to use his own strength to cross the gap. There was no teammates left around him. Their job done for the day. They got him into a position. He had to get himself into the leading position. 20 kilometres to go, and the 4 riders are now together. These are the 4 chasers we're looking at the moment, with Sebastian Langeveld just behind. 5 chasers, in fact.
Well, on the front, that is Nicky Terpstra, followed by Greg Van Avermaet. Langeveld just at the back of the group. 3rd position is Juan Antonio Fletcher, and Godin is the rider in the green of Europe car, just battling to stay in contact with this group. But what a phenomenal, classy move by Fabian Cancellara, waiting for the right moment to make his move.
Cancellara a little bit on the defensive still. He's got a problem recovering from the effort. Sepp van Mark is the man setting the pace off the sector of cobblestones. Or is it still on it? It's still on it. We continue around the right-hander. Let's take a look at the chain bouncing here.
You see how much pounding these machines take. There's around about 24 bikes are used by the teams in a race like this, and one team, especially FDJ, they've assembled 102 special wheels for their day in Paris-Roubaix. They use a slightly larger tyre in Paris-Roubaix as well, and if you know how to measure in new money, it's up to as much as 24 or 25 millimeters across, which is almost an inch.
Well, they can change the wheels, but they can't change the legs, unfortunately, and many legs are getting tired right now as they run into the last 17 kilometres. We're back to the Chavanel group. Still has not lost all hope at all, and he's still driving at the front, but he's compromised. He's on the same team as the two riders who are now in the breakaway, Stein Vandenberg and Stuybar. And so, although he's looking after himself here, he's not going to endanger their chance of victory.
No, it's all survival now, as we can see Godin just at the back. He's in the second group of chasers here in that green jersey. He's now paying for all of the efforts that he's put in through in the course of the day. When you make an effort in a professional bike race, you've got to make sure that it's not a wasted effort, because it's all a question of who are we shouting for here? Fabian Cancellara.
Yes, he has a famous fan club here in this part of the world, as well as in Switzerland, especially in Belgium. And Belgium is literally 5 minutes across the road from Roubaix, so he might feel he's even racing home here. And Stuybar grabs himself a drink. He's the real find here in this year's Paris-Roubaix. Zdenek, Zybar, as he comes up to the leaders, 2 Omega Quick-Step, taking on a Blanco and a Radio Shack rider as we head on to sector number 4. And this is a 5-star sector.
It certainly is. It's called the Carrefour de l'Arbre. It's 1.5 miles away from here, or 2 kilometers if you like. And it starts off with what they call the pavé bleu, the blue cobblestones. They're granite, they're slippery, and if you get a little bit of rain on them, I've seen many riders go down extremely hard. But Fabian Cancellara, he knows the Carrefour de l'Arbre as the damage is being done in the second chasing group on the road.
We'll watch with interest as the leading chase group here splits up, with Godin and Langeveld are being unhooked from the other 3. This commercial-free segment is brought to you by BMC Switzerland, manufacturers of the Gran Fondo GF01, the ultimate bike for the Paris-Roubaix. Some close-ups of faces of pain here as we run down this third group on the highway. At 16 kilometres, they'll be looking for the 15-kilometre banner to go now. We expected before this race started that if Cancellara was in a winning position, he would make his move on this sector of cobblestones, the Carrefour de l'Arbre. Now let's see if he can, because he's had a real tough ride to get here.
Well, he's ridden across from group to group to get himself into the leading group of riders on the road. This is the first part of the pavé, the Carrefour de l'Arbre, over the pavé bleu, as they call them in this part of the world, the blue cobblestones. They are extremely slippery, but what's most difficult about the Carrefour de l'Arbre is once you start to swing away and start to climb up to the... Oh, there's a crash. Somebody's gone down there, and that was one of the riders from Omega Pharma Quick-Step.
It's Stein Vandenberg who's gone down. Got himself, his front wheel twisted on the cobblestones, and a painful sit down on the stones.
Well, I think he might have just touched one of the spectators just over to the right-hand side of the road, and he wasn't able to control himself there. So now it's down to just 3 men at the front of this race.
Well, that's real bad luck there. You saw his front wheel just snick the cobblestone. He couldn't straighten it up. It took him out, and that's reduced the odds now, and it's put all the pressure on the Czech Republic Stuybar, his teammate, to control Cancellara and Van Mark. 3 riders clear on the Carrefour de l'Arbre.
Well, Cancellara over on the right-hand side. There's 1.4 kilometers left of this section of cobblestones, rated as a 5-star section of cobblestones. One of the most difficult, alongside of the Forest of Arenberg, Mont-Saint-Pavel. And this is where in the past a rider who's got the legs is able to open up the gap, because when you turn around to the left, all of a sudden it starts to climb up to that very famous old restaurant, the Carrefour de l'Arbre.
Well, the pace being forced there by Sepp Van Mark on the right is stopping any thoughts of attacking by Cancellara. He's been on the defensive there. Little lady looks shining on him, taking out the strong riding Stein Vandenberg. Flag of Brittany there on the left of the road. And look at this, he's moved up the inside. Is this where the pressure goes on from Fabian Cancellara? Certainly Stuybar's ready for it. He's digging very deep to hold on to the wheel of this machine.
Well, he's got the bit between the teeth, Fabian Cancellara, but he's not putting the gap between himself and the other riders. That was the first little try. He didn't open up the gap there, so now he slows down a fraction. And look at Sepp Van Mark on the right-hand side saying, OK, you want to give me a go, I'll come back at you.
I've never seen Van Mark ride as well as this now. He's trying to hurt Cancellara, who's going to recover from that little tempter. It looks as though he can. Inside, 15 kilometres to go to the finish, the crucial sector of the course, the last 10 miles now. Cancellara has won from this point before.
Well, now he starts to dig up. He's almost come to the end of this section of cobblestones, and he hasn't opened up the gap that he was going to look for. I wonder what he would feel if he goes down to a sprint down onto the velodrome in Roubaix here, because they're now looking at 15 kilometres to go. We're inside of 10 miles. It's 32 seconds back to the group containing Sylvain Chavanel.
Sepp Van Mark riding like he's never ridden before in a one-day classic. Oh, me, that was lucky. That was so lucky. The crowd dived inside there because they just saw the Czech Republic's man do almost what his teammate did, but he recovered.
Good job he's a cyclocross rider, Phil, because I don't think many other riders will have been able to recover from a move like that. He really is a brilliant bike handler, but that, in fact, has dislodged him. And right up until this moment, he was able to stay in the slipstream of Fabian Cancellara.
Well, this is Stein Vandenberg trying to get back on terms there, unaware that we almost had a déjà vu for his teammate, Zdeněk Stybar. Well, if the legs of Fabian Cancellara can't get rid of the Omega Pharma Quick-Step boys, then Lady Luck does, because now he's only got one rider to worry about.
Yeah, just sitting right on his wheel there is Sepp Van Mark, the Belgian rider, wondering whether he's riding behind the high-speed French train here this afternoon, although it does hail from Bern in Switzerland.
Now remember that Zdeněk, as we look at him here, was brought to the leaders, sitting on the wheel of Cancellara. Now he's going to have to get back to him under his own steam, as two riders remain at 14 kilometres to go. And wheel for wheel, Van Mark is looking good.
Well, he's not taking anything of the reputation of Fabian Cancellara to nullify his forces here this afternoon. He even has the cheek to flick the arm there to say to Cancellara, come on, it's your turn to do a pace at the front.
Well, Paris-Roubaix living up to its reputation today. The riders are facing the queen of the classics, and she's in angry mood right now as she tries to pick the leaders off for herself. A minute 32 the spread to Chavanel. I don't think that's possible to come back from, but you never know, because at the moment there are 2 versus Stybar at 10 seconds, and then Stein Vandenberg behind him.
It just shows you how tough it can be for a rider like Stybar. It's easy to ride into the slipstream of a bike rider like Fabian Cancellara because you can save 30% of your energy, but listen to the crowd here.
13.8 kilometres to go. Still trying to fight his way back into this picture now. Zdeněk Stybar of Omega Pharma Quick-Step. He's not that far behind. He has a chance. He could get back.
Shaking his head there, Phil. He knows that if he hadn't had that little bit of a contretemps with somebody at the side of the road, he would not have been dislodged from what looks like being the leading group of riders here. Cancellara is still looking very, very relaxed, but he wouldn't want to go down to the stadium and try to sprint it out with Van Mark.
This is the second reasonable group on the road here, coming off that Sector 3 cobblestones now. Sebastian Langeveld leading the group here just at the moment. Fletcher is in second place. These chasers beginning to look a little bit out of it at the moment. This commercial-free segment is brought to you by BMC Switzerland, manufacturers of the Gran Fondo GF01, the ultimate bike for the Paris-Roubaix. Just looking at the bloodied arm here of Stein Vandenberg. He went down quite heavily there, and I think the stuffing's been knocked out of his morale too, because at the back of quite a large group here, all of these rides at some point were up the front, but the cobbles have taken them out of the action. Now what's going on here? This was, here we are, let's have a look. This was the right-hand bend by the Czech cyclocross man, Stybar. That's the skill of a man who races over fields in the winter, because he held his bike upright, but it just shows the effort, Paul, he's putting in to try and get back.
And the risks that he's taking. He knows right now he's got to take a risk on every corner if he wants to eat into the advantage of these two riders. They've opened up the gap now to 21 seconds. Cancellara has played the game perfectly here this afternoon, but can he finish it off? Can he take the sprint up against Sepp van Mark, or will he try and get rid of him on the final climb of the day up to the small hamlet of Hem?
Well, I just wonder what is going through the mind now of Fabian Cancellara. There's one man he cannot seem to get rid of at the moment, although he doesn't seem too concerned. Nice bit of riding through the chicane, Fabian, as he just flicked through there and took a half a length on the sheer effort through the bushes. But Sepp van Mark, remember, he's Belgium, and this is the country which does so well here in Paris-Roubaix, with 56 victories to their name. Tom Bonen, the latest Belgian winner last year, when he made it 4 straight wins, well, not 4 straight wins, but 4 wins, and became the joint record holder with the retired Roger de Vlaming, the man who earned the nickname Le Gitan, or the Gypsy. There's the face of Cancellara. Remember, this man has not had an easy ride to be in the driving seat. He has had to close gap after gap to put himself in the driving seat. Now we'll find out how much energy has he used, and is there going to be a surprise result? We're just 11 kilometres from the finish.
Well, he's got to try and figure out how can he outfox Fabian Cancellara. Cancellara is no mean sprinter when it comes down to races. I remember him winning a stage into Compiègne of the Tour de France when he had his yellow jersey on his shoulders, and he outfoxed all of the sprinters on that occasion with a very last burst to the line.
Well, Sepp van Mark is also a good sprinter. It might be who can handle the track. The velodrome itself are better as they come onto the stadium to the usual huge crowd cheer as they come into the track. The crowd, as always, watching this event on television from the centre of the stadium. And there's quite a big crowd here now, to put it mildly. 2 riders heading towards Roubaix, just over 10 kilometres or 6.5 miles from the finish. Sepp van Mark still has good legs, willing to work with Fabian Cancellara, who has this awesome reputation that alone would frighten you off trying to beat him.
It most certainly would. Have a look at this speed there. You can see we're looking at 50 kilometres an hour. That's 31 miles an hour these guys are going after almost 6 hours in the saddle this afternoon. Just around the corner, there's always a little bit of a tricky part of Paris-Roubaix here, because there's a railway crossing that in the past has come down right in front of the riders. But as we go around the corner, I'm looking to see if the lights are on. The barriers are up. It's a clean bill of sailing now for Cancellara and Sepp van Mark.
Yes, some big names disqualified at that level crossing a few years ago because they ducked under the barrier. Not to be advised when a train is coming. 35 seconds, he's nudged out another second, gone inside 10 kilometres to go. Look at the face of Sepp van Mark here. He's only 24 years of age, Sepp van Mark, and Garmin Barracuda last year let him go, even though he won a Belgian Classic at Nieuwsblad. And this year, no big results yet, but clearly come here in a great mood.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, in fact, he finished second in Gent-Wevelgem, but he's not showing any fear of the reputation of Fabian Cancellara on what has finally turned out to be a spring day in the northern part of Europe.
I could do with that now, but I have to say, even though it is rather chilly, it is a beautiful day here in Roubaix today. And the crowd, although they're well wrapped up for the winter conditions, are enjoying what they're seeing. Whatever happens today, Fabian Cancellara has been yet again totally brilliant, knowing the whole world was against him. He's picked his way through the rubbish and got himself to the front, so you can't blame him for that.
Well, he raced very sensibly. He'd be happy to see that sign there. 10 kilometres to go to the finish. The race referees obviously feel that this is the winning move of Cancellara, because they've left the team car of Radio Shack and, of course, of Fabian Cancellara go by to join their man in the leading group.
This is the chase group here. Nicky Terpstra, champion of Holland, on the back. They go under the sign, 10 kilometres to go. Metre by metre, time is running out here. 44 kilometres to 44 seconds to that group. Cancellara driving it again once more. 2 crashes he's had since he won at the Tour de Flanders last week. He's bounced back each time, and quite clearly, true to his word, he didn't hurt himself. He's riding extremely well.
and he's keeping the pressure on all of the time. He wants to try and fatigue the rider who's with him. He wants to make sure that when it comes down to the finish line, he's almost asphyxiated Sepp van Mark. But Van Mark must have to think in the back of his mind, how am I going to beat this man? What am I going to do? Because unlike many of the other professional bike races we followed, this one actually finishes on a track, and it's a very difficult track to judge, because if you start the sprint too early, you fade before the finish line, and the rider with you can jump you right on the line.
And remember that the Roubaix Velodrome is quite a steeply banked track, and if you're not used to track cycling, it can be daunting, especially when fatigue is setting in. Now it looks as though Cancellara, glancing across there, is just checking where the others might be. Well, he might have been saying to Sepp van Mark, come and give me a hand as we go on to sector number 2. And it's advantage Cancellara. He drops to the back here. We are now at Willems-Arnhem, 1.4 kilometres.
Yeah, this is really a celebratory section of cobblestones. As you can see, there's a cycle path over to the left-hand side, but I saw Henny Kuiper come unstuck in this race back in 1980 when he zigzagged from one side of the road to the other, and he popped his tyre off when he only had a 20-second advantage. He was panicking like crazy, but fortunately the team management came up alongside him, gave him a new bike, and he went on to win the race on that occasion.
A little bit of a wheel flick there from Team Blanco. No advertising on the jersey of Sepp van Mark because he's part of the team that last year was Rabobank. Although they still are offering the salaries to these riders, Rabobank no longer wants to be involved in professional cycling since the Armstrong debacle and Levi Leipheimer's confession that when he rode with Rabobank, he took drugs as well. As a result, they pulled the plug. And as a result, Team Blanco, as they're now called, is having their best ever season.
Cancellara now looking at the back wheel of Sepp van Mark, wondering whether or not he's got the acceleration to beat this younger rider to the finishing line. There is the section number 2 to go, and this is the 5-man chasing group. Juan Antonio Fletcher is the rider in second position. On the back, Sebastian Langeveld for the Australian Orica Green Edge, and Nicky Terpstra getting a fairly free ride now as we go back to the Tête de la Course. At 7 kilometres to go. 4.5 miles to write your name into the history books.
Well, Cancellara, for me, is suffering just that little bit, because at this stage, with one man left, he would have tried to go alone, and he hasn't put that move in, which indicates to me he's used a lot of energy to be where he is right now, and Sepp van Mark will be assessing that too. The gap has shot up to a minute 21 for those that matter behind, and so this is the winner today, but which one?
That is the big question mark. There will be a huge roar for the man in first position, Sepp van Mark, because I can tell you we're only about 5 kilometres away from the Belgian border here, and they will have streamed across here to try and encourage their man to a victory. But what can he do to beat number 21? The massive pre-race favourite, Fabian Cancellara. We're just coming to the end of this section of cobblestones now, just on the outskirts of the small town of M, and it's a minute back to Stuybar and a minute 21 back to Fletcher, and Sylvain Chavanel's group is almost 2 minutes in arrears.
The pressure is on. Both of these riders are just reaching the limit of their day, I think, and I don't think they've got it in themselves now to put in one last attack. They could be going to the velodrome together here. A minute should be enough, because Zadek Stuybar is losing ground. Very unlucky, but what a stroke of fortune for Fabian Cancellara and indeed Sepp van Mark when the two Omega Pharma Lotto riders parted company with the breakaway in almost identical circumstance, with their front wheel getting stuck on the edge of the cobblestones.
Well, this is the third man on the road. A great revelation. We knew this man from his ability to ride extremely good cyclo-cross races around the world and took himself to a world title on 2 occasions. But now he's proving to be a great one-day classics rider. And he must wonder what would have happened if he hadn't had that little bit of a mishap. Would he still be in contact with the 2 leaders?
I rather feel he would, but we'll never know, I don't think. If he rides and finishes third in Paris-Roubaix, that in itself would be simply outstanding for a man who specialised until recently in riding the winter sport of cyclocross. 1:17, just over 5 kilometres from the finish as they start to run on smoother roads. We just have the celebratory 0.3 of a kilometre of cobblestones where they swing them off this lovely road onto the cobblestones just outside of the velodrome. to remind them that they're almost home.
Well, Juan Antonio Fletcher all of a sudden has come across the gap, and he's rejoined their Stuybar here in third and fourth position on the road, and they now are also looking at just over 3 miles to go to the finishing line, and Juan Antonio Fletcher has found himself a second wind.
Fletcher, the best finishing Spanish rider, along with Poble, having taken second in 2007, now racing for third place. I love Roubaix. Yes, but not when it's so freezing cold. But today is reasonably warm now as we come towards the middle of the afternoon here. There is the velodrome, the crowd around its rim. It's a big track, this, when you ride a track race here. It's an old concrete track. But they must never knock it down because it is history here in Roubaix, even though the most modern track is now built and open this year alongside.
Yes, it's 500 meters around this track, fairly steep in the bankings, but the track that they've built not too far, only a stone's throw away from the finishing line here, is state of the art. In fact, they just recently held the French National Championships there. Fabien Cancellara now in second position. Must be wondering, what is he going to do to beat this younger man who's got with him and matched him, I have to say, Phil, wheel mark for wheel mark over the last of these cobble sections.
He won't be 25 till the last weekend of the Tour de France, Sepp Van Mark, this year in July. And he's not riding like a man who's trying to cheat a win, is he? He's driving that breakaway with Fabien Cancellara. This is going to be some sprint in the track at Velodrome. These are the chase groups here, and they're still, as Fletcher is here. Remember that Fletcher went up to join Stuybar. There is Stuybar. They're now been joined by the rest. Nicky Terpstra is up here as well. Now, as Zdeněk Stuybar, we saw the situation with Van den Berg, and then almost an identical situation on the left of the picture. You could see that he just went off the road a little bit, and then he shot across the road, and it cost him dearly. It unhitched him from the two leaders. So both Amigo Farmer quick-step riders in the breakaway out on the cobblestones. There's the attack. It comes at 4 kilometers to go, but a very quick reaction indeed.
Well, Van Mark is right onto it. Fabien Cancellara obviously not feeling comfortable and confident about the fact that he can beat the Belgian rider if it comes down to the sprint. Has used this little launch pad just on the outskirts of him to try and open up a gap. Van Mark has clawed his way back into second position.
He knows now that Sepp Van Mark is not to be messed around with. That was a hard attack by Fabien Cancellara as he digs, but Van Mark was ready. He was ready for the move, and he was straight onto his wheel.
Well, 2.5 miles to go. The gap to the riders behind is unsurmountable now at 1 minute and 17 seconds. Van Mark, did you see that? He just loosened his brake at the back there. He wants to get his bike as free as possible. He wants every possible chance to beat Fabien Cancellara in this sprint.
Now, Cancellara eases back. He wants a breather again. Sepp Van Mark willing to work and go through, saying, "You haven't got me yet," as they go in tandem towards the concrete track of Roubaix. And once on the track, Sepp Van Mark is a very, very good finisher. It's a long time since we've had a good sprint finish on the Roubaix track in Paris-Roubaix.
Just a little tester from Fabien Cancellara, but Sepp Van Mark in second position there was not feared at all by that move there. He clawed his way back in, and that was probably the hardest part of the course on the run-in over the last couple of kilometers. That's Juan Antonio Fletcher now trying to get free from the chasing group behind.
Towing Nicky Terpstra there, and also Greg Van Avermaet and Godin just coming up as well. And now they're all looking at each other, so the leaders will gain time once again. Sebastian Langeveld just bringing up the rear of this group. They're still clear. Back with the leaders now. Little shake of the legs there, getting rid of the lactic in hopes that he can produce another sprint. A quick drink, and then is he going to hit him again, or will he take him to the track? 3 kilometers to go to the finish. No stranger to the front. Cancellara comes back. The riders rode really well against Cancellara, but so far Cancellara has had all of the answers.
Well, he's played everything perfectly so far, although I think he would prefer to be on his own at a moment like this. It's a nervous moment when you come to the end of a race that's almost 160 miles in length, and you're not on your own. You know that one small mistake in the last couple of meters can ruin 6 hours of effort throughout the afternoon.
But he knows where he is now. He's on the road which approaches the velodrome. It's dead straight till he turns right into the velodrome, except they'll flick left and go into the centre where those cars are in this particular picture, where they have a stretch of cobblestones before they turn off those into the track. 2.5 kilometers to go. These two riders know now one of them is going to win the 111th Paris-Roubaix. A man who's been there twice before, and a man who's never been in at the kill ever before in Paris-Roubaix. Now, how is he feeling? He's Belgian, and he's sitting at the back. He's in a jersey with no writing on because of the sponsorship withdrawal after the Armstrong debacle last year, which came to a head last year. And now, Sepp Van Mark looks over his shoulder, just make sure he's still safe. This is a big result, especially for the new team, Blanco.
And now's the time that he's not got to be afraid of the reputation of Fabian Cancellara. He has to take the risks when it comes down to this final sprint. He has to force the older rider to sit at the front. You see Cancellara there, little flick of the wrist saying, you know, come on, you come to first position. But no, Sepp Van Mark is a Belgian rider. Belgians are very canny when it comes down to the end of a race like this, especially when the majority of the races they ride are called kermis races, circuit races. You have to be a good sprinter to get yourself places in races like that. And Van Mark is going to force. There's a little move by Van Mark, but you're not going to catch up Fabian Cancellara, my mate.
I think they're going to go to the velodrome together now, that is for sure. Cancellara always had such a great result in Paris-Roubaix. This is the flick. You wouldn't believe the road went straight on, would you? Down the last ceremonial piece of cobblestone to bring down the curtain on a terrific Paris-Roubaix this year. And now Cancellara, the two-time winner, sitting in second place. He's been there as well on the result too, as he now heads towards the right turn into the stadium, and it's 1.5 laps of the track when they get there.
Well, there it is, the Flamme Rouge indicating 1 kilometer to go to the finish, and these two men, it's hard to get to the end of a race like this and know that somebody is going to have to lose. Sepp Van Mark is on the possibility of the best ever performance in his young professional career, while Fabian Cancellara would like to make it win number 3.
This is the service card approach now, but very shortly they will flick right and they'll come onto the track, and then we'll give it over to the crowd for the traditional welcome to the leader of Paris-Roubaix. This is going to be like a track sprint race where you start slowly and build up. They are on the track. Cancellara, the winner on 2 occasions, is first. Look at this. Sepp Van Mark is going to bring his bike to a standstill if he can. Drops through on the inside. He's got the lead. That's what Cancellara wanted him. So it is Sepp Van Mark who will bring these two round to the bell, then to 1 lap dash.
Well, it's a real pressure for the 24-year-old. He realizes how important this can be for his career. There is the bell indicating just 500 meters to go to the finish when they cross that line, and it's still Sepp Van Mark in first position.
For whom the bell tolls, is it Cancellara or is it Van Mark? Cancellara laying every tactic down he can think of now. He's coaxed the Belgian, the young Belgian, who's only 24, into the lead. They're going round the back straight, high on the banking. The attack must come through on the inside. Cancellara in no hurry, almost putting his brakes on there. Down the back straight, 250 meters to go. Van Mark says, when are you going to go? If he keeps moving his head like that, then Cancellara will wait till he looks to the front and he'll dive for it. Taking him up the banking into the home straight now. It's going to go from the front, and Sepp Van Mark has gone. And Cancellara is going to have to find something very, very special here as we get mixed up with the chasers. But as they come up towards the line now, it's Cancellara comes over the top in the shadow of the lapped men, and he takes his 3rd Paris-Roubaix. And this one, bet your life, it will be his best.
Well, he waited till the very last moment there. He forced the younger rider to come on and take the responsibility of leading out the sprint. Look at that, 27 miles an hour, the average here this afternoon. He forced the young Belgian to make the mistake of leading out. He had all the confidence. He knew he had the power.
The race for 3rd place now. Terpstra on the right, but Terpstra gets it. Van Avermaet will be 4th, and it looks as though Godin is in 5th.
That is the effort of victory for Fabian Cancellara. 2 massive big victories in a week.
The race carries on now, and this is Paolo. I think it was Luca Paolini there who's just come and snatched the place. He was off the back earlier with a flat tyre. I'm not too sure if it was. It was Alexander Kristoff in the same colours who's done it. Good result for the Norwegian.
Yeah, but look at this, Phil. They've got the lead out there coming. He tries to take him up the banking, but no problem at all for Fabian Cancellara. And at this point, he knows he's got the kick. The turbo's whistling for him. He just comes up to the back end of that group of riders who he laps right on the finishing line to get his third ever victory at Paris-Roubaix and his second big victory in a week.
Yes, and once again accomplishing the much coveted double of winning the great Belgian Classic, the Tour de Flanders last week, and the top French Classic, Paris-Roubaix, this week. That's the effort of a man. The last time I saw him in that position was in Medricio, when he just missed out on a medal in the World Road Race Championship, and he'd given his all and he didn't get the place he wanted. But this time he's got the gold here. Cancellara gave everything today, and that's the depth of a true champion, to be able to do that. He was such a clear favourite, but he never thought he would win in this manner. It's got to be one of his finest ever victories.
No, a brilliantly timed victory. He looked at all of the moves. He made his efforts all of the time.
Well, I love Roubaix, but I'm not sure that'll be the sentiment today of Fabian Cancellara, because Sepp van Mark pulled something special out of the wall there today with that second place, and he's got a lot of Paris-Roubaix left in his legs. Well, it was lucky, those boys, that they were just coming up behind there, the riders who were in the breakaway with him, the boys from Omega Pharma Quickstep, but they had their private wrestling match with the cobblestones and cost them their position in the lead. This is the race for third place, and Greg van Avermaet, the good sprinter on Team BMC, Taylor Finney's squad, on the left of our picture. He just pips him on the line, I think. We've lost track of Nicky Terpstra on the right there, but he would have been in fourth place. And Godin taking the fifth. This is the peloton, which contains Sylvain Chavanel. 3 minutes has gone by now. Thor Hushovd, Boysenhagen, as they continue just to come across the line. And I think that was a BMC rider who just came over the line there, one of the youngsters. I think it was Taylor Finney. I need to see that closer, but it looks like it was Taylor Finney will have come in with a fairly high position, and he should certainly have bettered his 15th place finish of last year. But there's now riders all over the track here. Some are going for a lap and some are finishing, so I'm not too sure. Here's confirmation of the result. Fabian Cancellara wins just inside 6 hours. Sepp van Mark in second place. Terpstra, Van Avermaet go down. Stuybar finishes in 6th place in the end. Sebastian Langeveld in 7th. Juan Antonio Fletcher 8th. A great ride by Kristoff, the Norwegian, there in 9th. He was the youngest of the Norwegians taking part, and this was his first Paris-Roubaix. There's Sepp van Mark here, dreaming of what might have been, but hey, he finished second. And that was a great result today. Let's have another look at the run. I thought when he made his move, he had done it. But Cancellara waited till he came off that final banking. And then we saw the lapped riders, not lapped, but almost lapped in front. And the final kick by Cancellara was just enough to seal his third victory in the Paris-Roubaix. And that puts him now in shot of winning, equaling the 4 victories of Tom Bonen and Roger de Vlaming. But he joins illustrious names here like Francesco Moser, Eddie Merckx, Rick Van Looy and Octave Lapitz. Those are the other riders who've won this race on 3 occasions. So Roubaix is now ready for the prize presentation, and it'll be a familiar man on the podium. This commercial-free segment is brought to you by BMC Switzerland, manufacturers of the Gran Fondo GF01. The ultimate bike for the Paris-Roubaix. See more at www.bmc-switzerland.com. So that's the situation, top 10 places in the World Tour classification. Next week, the interest will centre on Holland with the Amstel Gold Race, and then in 2 weeks' time, we'll be thinking of Liège-Bastogne-Liège, the Doyenne, the oldest classic of them all, which started in the late 1800s and is still going strong, the grand old lady. I think we're almost ready now for the prize presentation. I think Fabian Cancellara is standing up at last. And starting with the third place finish. And it is Nicky Terpstra here who has taken the third place. So on the photo, he did get the better of Van Aert, as Terpstra gets third place. And that's a terrific result for Nicky Terpstra, I must say. Champion of Holland. And couples up with his 2 third places in stage races this year, the Tour of West Flanders, a small event in Belgium, and the 3 days of De Panne, which is in fact 5 days. So, but they stick to the old title, which has always been the 3 jours de Panne. So he'll be happy with that. It's his first top 10 placing this year in a classic race. He finished 5th in Paris-Roubaix last year, 3rd this time around. Now waiting for second place now, and I should imagine a huge tear. The new youngster on the block in the Blanco Racing jersey, Sepp Van Mark, gets 2nd place in Paris-Roubaix. And now wait for the next man, because we're going to see a huge cheer go up. Van Mark has only won 1 race in his career. That was the classic Het Nieuwsblad last year, the start of the year, and now he's got 2nd in the Queen of the Classics. But wait for the next one, because this will be the big cheer for the man with the biggest cobblestone and indeed the biggest heart. A brilliant win. So let's wait now for the announcement of Fabien Cancellara. But well done, Sepp Van Marken. You can just see in the backdrop there, Cancellara giving one quick interview before they call him up.
Il gagne Paris-Roubaix, le vainqueur de la 111e édition, le champion suisse, Fabien Cancellara.
The flag of Switzerland flies high in France, and Fabien Cancellara, well, the shrug of the shoulders says it all. He said, I'm here, but really, there were times when I thought I wouldn't be today. His 3rd victory, his 3rd cobblestone. Time to reinforce the foundations once more of his property, because they're really heavy. And he joins the big names, La Piste, Rick Van Looy, Eddy Merckx and Francesca Moser, also as 3 times winner. See, it's huge, that cobblestone. You can buy them, by the way, in the local souvenir store. The first time I've seen them on sale here. Not as big as that, I hasten to add. And they'll cost you €20, which is about $25 or something like £18 in English money. So there he is, Fabien Cancellara, the pride of Switzerland, kisses all round. He won it, he was the favourite, but he made a tough job of it because the riders wouldn't let him get his 3rd win easily. But at the end of the day, he is once more the champion of Paris-Roubaix. We're just waiting now for the Swiss anthem and the salute to the crowd, but there it is, Paris-Roubaix, won by Fabien Cancellara. On the left in 2nd place, Sepp Van Mark, and on the right, the champion of the Netherlands, Nicky Terpstra, who got the 3rd place. This was a great edition of Paris-Roubaix. Well, that wraps it up from Roubaix, but remember, the classic season continues, and coming up in 2 weeks' time, the Epic Cycle Series, presented by Michelob Ultra, brings you La Doyenne, Liège-Bastogne-Liège. It's a complete test of a cyclist's ability. Liège-Bastogne-Liège in 2 weeks on the NBC Sports Network. And for a full schedule, log on to our website at nbcsports.com. Well, it's been another memorable day here at Paris-Roubaix for the 111th edition of the race. Next year, we'll be up to number 112. For Paul Sherwin, I'm Phil Liggett saying so long for now.